Welcome, Liz.
Morning, Director Janae.
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
All right, good morning, everybody. We are 8:30 or maybe a minute after or so. Let's go ahead and get settled in. We got a pretty robust agenda today. We'll try and take a break here and there and maybe even break for lunch. We'll see what the day holds. But anyway, I think we've got everybody in place. So with that, let's go ahead, and I would like to call to order today's meeting, Friday, September 26, 2025. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners. And with that, if I could maybe have, how about Commissioner Bourne lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, and maybe if I could have the department take roll call, please. Here.
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 Here. Here.
Here.
All right, thank you for that. So with that, if I could have any county advisory board members that are in attendance today stand and be identified. And if for the record, just, you know, we're on Zoom and everything, if I could have you come down to the mic and identify.
Paul Dixon, Clark.
Jim Cooney, Elko.
Anula Wildrich, Clark.
Joe Cream, Pershing.
All right. And how about any county advisory boards members via Zoom?
Glenn, you're unmuted. Please introduce yourself.
Glenn Bunch, Mineral.
Okay.
Joe Crawford, Lyon.
All right, I think that's all via Zoom. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 2. This is public comment period. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. Persons making comments are asked to begin by stating their name for the record. So with that, any public comment here in Las Vegas? All right, no public comment here in Las Vegas. So how about any public comment via Zoom? No public comment via Zoom. So we will bring it back to the agenda item number 3, and this is approval of agenda for possible action. The commission will review the agenda and may take action to approve the agenda for September 26th. The commission may remove items from the agenda, continue items for consideration, or take items out of order. Yes, Director Janae.
Yes, thank you for the record, Alan Janae. The department would like to request that we rotate item, or agenda items number 10 and 21, and take number 21, the presentation on hunting and fishing and trapping regulations, and move that to the place of item number 10, and take item number 10, the presentation on regulatory modifications to Link Master Guide and Sub-Guide accountability back to where item 21 was. This is to help us with staff coverage out of law enforcement. There were some interviews necessary and they needed to be somewhere else today. So if we could make that adjustment, that would be great.
Okay, perfect. Good. Anything from the commission on today's agenda or that requested item? All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and take this out for any public comment here in Las Vegas regarding today's agenda. All right, seeing none, how about any public comment via Zoom on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for any discussion or comment or motion.
There's no further discussion on agenda item number 3. I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 3, approval of agenda.
With those noted changes.
With the noted changes.
With the noted changes of 10 and 21.
All right, so we've got a motion from Vice Chair Young and a second from Commissioner Cavilla. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving on to agenda item number 4. This is approval of minutes for possible action. Commission minutes may be approved for the June 13 and 14, 2025, and the August 15 and 16, 2025 meeting. So for 4A, this is the June 13 and 14, 2025 commission meeting minutes. The commission will review and may approve commission meeting minutes. Yes, Dag Brigette.
So I'm informed by Director Janae that you don't have a quorum here for the June 13 and 14 commission meeting minutes. As I understand it, there's not enough people here who were at that meeting to vote on that. So I would recommend you move that to another meeting.
Easy enough. So noted. All right, so we will, excuse me, based on that, we will move from item agenda 4A, and we will hopefully have a quorum at the next one, and work through that. So with that, we will move on to 4B. This is August 15 and 16, 2025 commission meeting minutes. Again, the commission will review and may approve commission meeting minutes. So any questions, concerns from the commission on meeting minutes from August 15, 16? All right. Yeah, I went through them myself. Everything seemed to be in good order. Didn't find anything outside the norm. So with that, I'll take that out for public comment. Any public comment here in Las Vegas regarding the August 15, 16 meeting minutes? All right, seeing none. How about any public comment via Zoom? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for any further discussion or motion. Yes, Commissioner Cavilla.
Yep, so I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the August 15th and 16th, 2025 meeting minutes as presented.
All right. So we have a motion from Commissioner Cavilla. We have a second from Commissioner Mesna. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right. So we will move on to agenda item number 5. This is member item announcements correspondence. This is informational. Commissioners may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. The commission will review and may discuss correspondence sent or received by the commission since the last regular meeting and may provide copies for the exhibit file. Correspondence sent or received by Secretary Janae may also be discussed. So, yes, Director Janae, did you? Oh, okay. I saw you reaching for the mic. So, but yeah, no, I think that all the correspondence that were received were distributed out, and I hadn't received anything since then. So, anything else from the commission at all? Yep, Commissioner Messna.
Sorry about that. So I did receive a letter just the other day, and I thought I'd just forward it on to everybody just real quickly if I had a minute. This is from Nevada Cattlemen's Association. It says, "Dear Chairman Rogers and members of the board, the Nevada Cattlemen's Association appreciates the opportunity to provide comments on the proposed adaptive population objectives to the elk species management plan. The NCA agrees to the proposed procedures laid out by the Nevada Department of Wildlife for evaluating elk numbers in a given hunt unit on an annual basis. The procedures and population guidelines are not as important as having a legitimate seat at the table. The makeup of the Elk Management Committee will have a tremendous bearing on the ultimate success of this process. The NCA believes that the appointment of 6 members to the Elk Management Committee, 3 of which will be representing farming and ranching, is appropriate. Private land ownership is a significant contributor to these elk populations, and we appreciate NDOW's mitigation programs. The mitigation programs have been effective in relieving conflict created by elk populations. Because we are discussing the potential increase of 10% from the previous year, this compounding effect year over year would result in the doubling of a population in 8 years, whereas a 10% decrease in numbers would diminish the annual change as the population numbers lower. In the event that a 10% increase has been implemented for 4 consecutive years, the Nevada Cattlemen's Association would ask the Commission to consider a pause in the additional population increase in the 5th year, to give an opportunity for the Elk Management Committee to truly evaluate the impact of those population increases. An increase in population will not occur overnight. This natural pause would provide an opportunity for a monitoring and analysis point to determine if the specific unit groups are actually achieving the population targets determined by the Elk Management Committee on an annual basis. For example, has the anticipated annual increase or decrease that has been set as the goal been achieved? If not, is the reason due to weather, disease, or because the resource capacity has been exceeded, etc.? The NCA appreciates the early engagement in this process and looks forward to a continued dialogue. Sincerely, Haynes Holman, Nevada Cattlemen's Association President.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. Anything else from the commission? Any other items? All right, seeing none, we will move on then from agenda item 5 on to agenda item 6. And agenda item 6 is county advisory boards to manage wildlife. This is informational. County advisory boards to manage wildlife members may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action will be scheduled on a future commission agenda. So with that, is there any county advisory boards here in Las Vegas?
Good morning, Commissioners. Anula Wildridge, Clark County CAB. I would like to call your attention to an ongoing issue that seems to be increasing in frequency lately, and that has to do with all the parks that contain fishing ponds. We have seen an increase in injuries to Canadian geese and other protected species as a result of improperly discarded fishing line and hooks. Despite the fact that there are containers for these materials, any given day you go to one of these parks, you will see fishing lines scattered throughout the grounds. You'll see fishing hooks. And the problem is we don't have that many wildlife licensed veterinarians down in southern Nevada to treat these birds. Also, a citizen cannot transport these birds if they need care without breaking the law. So what I would like to propose is that we provide information at the fishing clinics and also when we're issuing licenses, letting people know that they need to properly dispose of their materials and why we emphasize the importance of doing so. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Any other county advisory board members here in Vegas that have any items to be heard? All right, seeing none. How about any county advisory boards via Zoom? None, okay. So with that, we will close out agenda item 6 and move on to agenda item number 7, and these are our reports. This is informational. 7A, the division activity reports, Secretary Janae and division administrators. A report will be provided on highlights from the Nevada Department of Wildlife recent activities. So Director Janae.
Thank you. For the record, Alan Janae. To start off with, in the Director's Office, Deputy Director McAdoo attended a town hall meeting hosted by Congressman Amodei to discuss the proposed White Pine Pump Storage Project. The project is expected to include 2 reservoirs located in the Duck Creek Range and Steptoe Valley with underground generation equipment and a new transmission line. Energy for pumping would be delivered through a 25-mile transmission line connecting the project to the Robinson Summit substation. Additionally, with the retirement of Chris Vasey, the Conservation Education Administrator position, we are in the interview process, and we are expecting to make that announcement probably sometime next week. So we should have a replacement, and in that absence, you'll see Doug Nielsen, our Southern Region Supervising Conservation Educator, will be substituting for this meeting. So any questions? Please see Doug. Beyond that, pretty notable item is the Office of Inspector General recently completed an audit of our wildlife and sport fish restoration grants awarded to the department by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. The audit reviewed federal expenditures, license revenue, and historical records related to the acquisition, management, and disposal of real property and equipment purchased with either license revenue or wildlife and sport fish restoration grant funds. The audit concluded, and the final report indicated that the department received no findings or recommendations. And so it sounds small, but it's huge. Literally, across the 50 states, to get a WISFR audit with no findings is huge. Like, every state agency strives to do that. The fact that we got through that, no findings, is very notable at a nationwide scale. And so absolutely giving accolades to Fiscal for, making it through that process and leading the auditors through it, but also to the staff. That means that everybody was following all the steps and all the procedures to do it in the right manner, to document things so that the WISFR auditors couldn't find any findings. So it's a huge thing. I just wanted to absolutely bring that to the Commission's attention, and yeah, we're really, really happy about that fact. So with that, I'll take any questions, or we will pass it along to the Biodiversity Division.
All right, any questions at all from the Commission for Director Janae at this point? Yeah, no, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Director Janae, that with the audit. I can only imagine the regulatory and compliance procedures to follow, for the department. So to have folks come in and comb through everything and have no findings whatsoever, being in the banking industry and being heavily regulated, I know what those things mean. So congratulations to you and the team. So good work. All right.
Good morning, members of the Commission, Chairman. Jasmine Kleiber, Biodiversity Division Administrator. Highlights for the Biodiversity Division. Over the past year, the Biodiversity Division led 10 volunteer projects that brought people into the field for everything from bio-blitzes at national monuments and wildlife refuges to reptile monitoring, bats and bridges surveys, and winter raptor counts. Together, these efforts added up to nearly 1,900 volunteer hours and more than 19,800 miles traveled. This resulted in $82,000 in-kind match for biodiversity programs for fiscal year 25. The division has also been collaborating with Department GIS staff to create an online tool for the 2022 State Wildlife Action Plan, or SWAP. This public-facing portal will open access to SWAP data and resources, including detailed species accounts for species of greatest conservation need and key habitats. A live presentation and demo of the new tool will be shared later today in the agenda. With that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Any questions from the commission at all at this time? All right, seeing none, thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right, how about conservation education?
Doug Nielsen, the Southern Region Conservation Education Supervisor for the record. Our Southern Region Volunteer Coordinator onboarded 4 interns recently, 2 each from the College of Southern Nevada and Nevada State University. Their primary focus will be helping with various programs with the biologists in the field, but will also help with conservation education programs. She also managed a large contingent of volunteers, almost 60, at a recent Guzzler build near Tonopah, which was dedicated to Jim Lusk, who was a former biologist with the Nevada Department of Wildlife, almost 30 years, and more than 20 of those years in Tonopah. And he's responsible for bighorn sheep and conservation in that area, and also for elk on Monitor Range and Table Mountain. So that turned out to be a good project. Personnel from the Conservation, Education, Fisheries, and Law Enforcement divisions represented NDOW at the White Pine County Fair. I think some of you maybe saw that during that commission meeting. We want to recognize Shane Boren and Cody Bliss, who helped us with the local arrangements and making things happen at that end. The WIN organization purchased bluegill for that fish tank to make that happen. And Sunfish Farms of Beaver, Utah, where the fish originated, actually threw in a couple of dozen fishing rods to give away as prizes during the event. So it turned out to be pretty good. In August, conservation educators in the Eastern region assisted Nevada outdoorsmen in wheelchairs with their annual hunt. Based out of Eureka, 6 hunters from all over the country were awarded pronghorn tags donated by landowners and the Kinross Mine. All 6 of them were able to fill their tags on opening day. On the calendar in the upcoming weeks, we have the 2nd annual Pike Out, which was moved from the spring to October due to some weather issues. That'll take place in October 11th. And then Ducks and Donuts, if I can put a plug in for that, out at the Overton Wildlife Management Area on the 18th. You're all invited. You just have to be willing to be up and early. We get started at 4 a.m., but you won't find a funner time. And we appreciate the support, ongoing support of WIN and Las Vegas Woods and Waters, who make that possible. So if you're good at flipping flapjacks, come on out. We can always use you. And then the other one is we have a youth pheasant hunt in Biawaway up in the Eastern region coming up in November. In August, NDOW continued spreading awareness of chronic wasting disease through paid ads on social media, on TV, and in mass emails to hunters. E-blasts were also sent by NDOW to include SWAN permit application reminder, an email spreading awareness of first come, first served tags available to juniors, a Sheldon Sage Grouse permit application period email, the wildlife newsletter, and an email alerting tag holders of Cottonwood Peak fire activity in eastern Nevada. Educational events included a series of 3 nocturnal animal walks at Floydland Park here in Las Vegas, as well as Know Your Nevada, Living with Wildlife, and Wild Neighbors classes. Shooting sports classes remain popular offering at the Clark County Shooting Complex Education Center, and staff has also participated in multiple career and internship fair opportunities, most recently with the College of Southern Nevada. Our publications, the 25-26 Small Game Hunting Regulations and Seasons publication is available on the website and at offices, and the 2026 Fishing Regulations are currently being edited. As far as media highlights go, NDOW was mentioned in the news 83 times in the month of August. Stories mentioning the department in TV, radio, and online news reached an audience of more than 11 million people, resulting in a publicity value of over $299,000. Topics included more stories on Nevada's work to relocate drought-impacted sheep in southern Nevada and drought-related stories, NDOW's participation in the Nevada Wildlife Federation's Women in Wildlife event, boating safety, living with coyotes, and numerous stories on bear awareness.
I just had I apologize, I just had a real quick question, and that is on the publications. I know it says here on the website, I assume so, but are those publications distributed out via social media as well? That people can access those links via social media, do you know?
I'm pretty sure that we've got those posted, but I can verify that.
Okay.
And make sure that if they aren't, that we get those taken care of.
Okay, perfect, good. And any questions from the commission at all? Yes, Commissioner Gavilli.
Not a question, just a comment. I want to thank the department and Commissioner Bourne and the NGOs and the private individuals that did the fish tank at the White Pine County Fair. I thought it was real neat. I got to take my kids there. I know talking to the department staff too, they were surprised at how many people showed up too. And I know White Pine, us from White Pine know that's a big deal. The fair is like one of the biggest events of the year. So it was pretty neat. I don't know if that's something we can maintain every year. You know, it'd be cool to see it again. But I think it was a great deal to have there at the fair. So I just wanted to thank everyone.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. Anything else from the commission? All right, thank you very much.
Morning, Chair Rogers, Commissioners. For the record, Chris Crookshanks, Fisheries Division Administrator. From our eastern region, approximately 6,000 juvenile wipers were stocked at South Fork Reservoir in August. These represent surplus fish produced by the state of Utah and were given to NDOW free of charge. Elsewhere in the eastern region, wildfires have taken a significant toll on native trout streams in the eastern region this summer. The Cottonwood Peak Fire burned through a number of streams containing red band trout in the Bull Runs, Tuscaroras, and Independence Mountains, while the Jake's Fire in the snowstorms burned 7 streams containing Lahontan cutthroat trout in one of the last remaining interconnected LCT metapopulations. And from our southern region, the Southern Region Habitat Barge is up and running again after a lengthy amount of time for repairs and sitting idle. We've begun coordination with the Conservation Education Division staff to organize monthly events focused on building and installing habitat structures with volunteers and local fishing groups and clubs. And one other thing I had in response to comments from the Clark County CAB, I just had some conversations with Kim Tisdale, our sport fish coordinator. We're in the process of preparing the fishing regulation booklet for 2026, and we can absolutely put a call-out box in there pertaining to the proper cleanup and disposal of fishing line and fishing hooks and stuff when you're out fishing. We'd be more than happy to do that. And with that, I stand for any questions.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions from the commission at all? Just one question that I had, I'm curious. I haven't been out to any of the urban ponds in quite some time, but excuse me, I'm assuming there is, but is there signage around the lakes? And
Absolutely. We've got signage and disposal receptacles for fishing line and hooks and that type of stuff at the urban ponds here in the Las Vegas Valley.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Good. Anything else from the commission? Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Wes Coons, Game Warden Captain, for the record, filling in for Chief Knight. Law Enforcement Division. Game Wardens recently assisted BLM in temporarily shutting down recreational boating activity at Wild Horse Reservoir due to the active fire suppression operations in the area. Recreational boaters were intentionally interfering with firefighting aircraft attempting to scoop water from the lake, possessing a serious safety risk and hindering critical fire response efforts. Game Wardens also provided support in evacuating hunters from Unit 062 as part of the fire response. Regarding the Commission's and Committee's ongoing discussions around emerging technologies, the trespass issue, we want to update you on current enforcement efforts and investigations in these areas. Game Wardens are actively investigating multiple incidents involving use of trail cameras during season closure, use of thermal imaging technology for hunting big game animals, use of drones to harass or drive big game animals off private property, use of electronic bicycles within designated wilderness areas. In addition, hunter trespass investigations are occurring on a weekly basis across the state. That's all we have.
All right. Any questions at all from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Bourne.
Thank you for that report. So the use of drones to harass or drive big game animals off private land, I'm assuming, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
It's an open investigation, so I cannot.
All right. Anything else from the commission at all? And one question that I had, in terms of some of these investigations and, trail cameras and the thermal imaging, just a general question, I guess, for you. And that is, are you finding that those types of activities, in your opinion, are happening across the state or in particular areas of the state more than others? Just curious your thoughts or opinion on that.
For the most part, and I think the investigations, when they're closed, they'll show they're all over the state with heavier concentrations depending on seasons, right? Seasons in eastern Nevada starting a little bit, let's say later than seasons down south. We are seeing a concentration depending on when the season is. The closure date is the hard fast, but it's when people start getting in the hills and start reporting these issues, then it depends. It's season dependent.
All right. Anything else? Yes, Commissioner Mesden.
Quick question about the boats on Wild Horse. Were you guys able to provide any tickets or anything for that sort of intentional issue?
Wes Coons, for the record, for that, the intent issue with that becomes a very big thing. Can we prove that they, on purpose, were trying to mess with these guys or not? We basically just evacuated the entire lake and closed down the ramp so people couldn't launch anymore once the vessels were retrieved by the owners. It's the proving of intent that it's just not something we could have proven, so we just kicked everybody off pretty much and then shut down the ramps.
Thank you.
Yep.
I apologize. I had one other question.
Don't worry about it.
In light of some of the media that at least I've seen over the course of the last week or so of a couple of hunters in Colorado that went missing and ultimately I think were a lightning strike or something and unfortunately passed. But I saw on the report here that game wardens assisted in searching for an overdue or missing hunter and assisted another hunter with a medical emergency. I didn't hear anything on that, so I'm assuming everything was good with that?
Yeah, everything. We do get a handful of those every month. Overdue hunters called in by their loved ones. We always do go to the area. Most of the time, it's us and the county of which is involved. We have the medical emergency was, I want to say, out of Tonopah, and that gentleman was able to be assisted right then and there, helicoptered out, and then all of his belongings were brought in later at a later date. But I mean, it happens all the time. For the most part, we're able to locate these people before it becomes a big, urgent issue.
Yeah, good. All right, anything else from the commission? All righty, thank you, sir, appreciate it.
Staff Specialist Cody McKee from the Game Division. I'm filling in for Sean Espinoza. I think Game Division's up next, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
you are.
Okay.
You're good.
Previous divisions spoke to the severity of the Cottonwood Peak fire and a fire in the snowstorm range. I think the effects of these fires can't be understated. They occurred in high-quality mule deer, sage grouse, Columbian sharp-tailed grouse habitat, as well as a fire in the snowstorm range occurred in Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat. So obviously fire restoration is going to be extremely important in these areas. And we also sent out correspondence to hunters that would be in the area to inform them to try and minimize their impacts in those places, understanding that wildlife had been potentially in rough shape following those incidents. Game Division has progressed with the statewide bighorn sheep management plan revision. The history section has been revised and is about 75% complete. The habitat management, population management, harvest management, and wildlife health sections need to be completely revised. Authors and co-authors have been identified for each of these sections. In the meantime, regional game division biologists will be responsible for developing individual bighorn metapopulation herd descriptions, complete with histories, population and harvest trends, and major challenges. Within these sections, population objectives will be developed for each subherd based on a unit, hunt unit, or a unit group. And they will be inserted into an appendix of the plan once that revision is complete. Additionally, the wildlife connectivity plan was out for public review. Comments were due on September 19th. So we're in the process of reviewing those comments and incorporating recommendations into the final plan. There will be an update on the final plan once those revisions are made and incorporated with those public comments. And then I think the anticipated final publication date was at the end of October 2025, if I'm not mistaken, depending on the amount of comments. And then the other item that we wanted to highlight are our draft adaptive population objectives for elk populations that were directed by the Wildlife Commission back in June. And we'll be discussing that process here in a few more agenda items. So with that, I stand for questions.
All right. Any questions at all from the commission? Commissioner Bourne, yeah?
Yeah, the fires in northern Nevada, could you give some kind of an update on how many acres you're hoping to rehab, reseed in that effort? To 250,000 is a lot of acres.
Yeah, Cody McKee for the record. I'm going to have to punt that to Deputy Director McAdoo.
Good morning, Caleb McAdoo for the record. So as I recall, there's just under 400,000 acres that have burned statewide. The way that process works is depending on when the fires burn throughout the fire season, the BLM or whatever land management agency the fire occurred on develops the ESR plans. They have 21 days to complete the plan post-fire. And so there's this sequence and kind of a moving prioritization, if you will, based on the number of acres where the fires occur. So we had some later fires, and those priorities change and as things continue. Just yesterday, our staff met with the BLM on the Cottonwood Peak fire. The Cottonwood Peak fire is certainly a very high priority for the department given the resource values there. So the exact acreages and restoration activities are not yet determined, but those conversations are occurring. On the western side of the state, there was significant acreages burned as well. Some of those fires occurred earlier, plans have been developed, and a lot of aerial herbicide and seeding. I can't recall the exact acreages offhand. We can certainly supply that to you at a later time. But it's one of the largest, from a funding perspective, one of the larger years in terms of the amount of funds allocated to fire restoration, around $4 million that the department's looking at contributing to efforts, between seed purchases, restoration activities, herbicide, and things of that nature.
All right, anything else from the commission? Yes, Vice Chair Young.
Thank you, Chair Rogers. Mr. McKee, as to the Cottonwood fire and the, Jakes Creek or Snowstorm Complex fire, is that for mule deer, is that mostly migratory, summer range? I don't believe a lot of it's winter range, but what does that make up?
Yeah, Staff Specialist McKee for the record. I have our mule deer coordinator is present, and he would be more familiar with the seasonal range of the Snowstorm Complex. Summer range or winter? So Staff Specialist McKee, winter for the Snowstorm range, and for the Cottonwood Peak, that is migratory and transition range. So the Tuscaroras and into the Bull Run Basin.
All right, anything else from the commission? One thing that I had, real quick, Cody, I noticed in the report, under the elk and moose program, that there was a three-dimensional electric elk fence installed at a small property. Anyway, as we move forward with that, I'm assuming it's too early to tell whether that's effective or not effective, but I think as we move forward for yourself and Mr. Espinoza, I'd be curious to hear more about that as that plays out, to see if in fact, it sounds like as I read there that it's a little more widely used in parts of Canada, but not so much here in the US. But anyway, I'd just be curious to hear more about that as we move along.
Yeah, we'll be happy to provide an update. Early indications are it's working great. It's very popular in Canada for whatever reason. It hasn't really been adopted south of the border. We worked with a supplier that does a lot of wildlife hazing, specializes in wildlife hazing and equipment, and they hadn't used it before. We're really excited to help us out and install it, and early indications are it works great.
And again, probably too early to tell. We can talk about it a later time, but relatively cost effective, or is it?
Very inexpensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Good. All right, anything else from the commission? All righty, thank you, sir. Habitat Division. Good morning.
Morning, Commissioners. Brian Hamilton, Southern Region Habitat Supervisor. Filling in for Mark Freeze, who's on a mule deer hunt in the Toyabis right now.
Priorities.
Priorities. He made the right choice. Restoration staff have been actively engaged in preparing for proactive restoration efforts and participating in wildfire site tours. Staff are working closely with our federal partners on fire restoration and rehabilitation plans. At this time, roughly 110,000 acres of pre-emergent herbicide is proposed across key wildlife habitats, with work split between BLM and NDOW. Most pre-emergent application is implemented to prepare sites for improved seeding success after a year-long fallow. Chaining, aerial seeding, drill seeding, and shrub planting, and other restoration plans are also in development across the state. Approximately 46,000 acres of aerial seeding is proposed this fall and winter in the eastern region, with work split between NDOW and the Elko BLM. On the Jakes Creek fire, beaver dam analogs are a priority being proposed to catch sediment and protect over 20 miles of Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat on the South Fork of the Little Humboldt watershed. In August, water hauls were completed to 14 guzzlers throughout the state in all three regions. On average, guzzlers are at about 69% capacity on 53 units that have water level monitors. And this is primarily the Southern Nevada guzzler units. An average of ½ an inch of rain was received at guzzlers with the monitors with rain gauges in August. As mentioned earlier by Con Ed, a guzzler was recently constructed in the Silver Peaks on September 6, 2025. The guzzler is dedicated to Jim Lusk, who was the game bio in Tonopah from 1974 to 1997. The Fraternity of the Desert Bighorn Wildlife Habitat Improvements of Nevada, Nevada Bighorns Unlimited, all participated, as well as many people from the community of Tonopah. And I was on that build and got to meet Jim's family. His kids, grandkids, and his wife were there, and it was really cool to be able to work on that.
All right, how about any questions from the commission or comments or anything? Yeah, Commissioner Bourne, yes, sir.
Yes, yesterday on the way down here, I went by Upper Paranagit, I went by Nesbit. Lower Nesbit is completely dry. The upper end of Upper Paranagit is dry, and Paranagit is I think, minimum pool. And I would just like to know what's going on there, because there aren't going to be many ducks and geese there this winter, unless they want to get stuck in the mud.
Yeah, I talked to some of our WMA staff this morning, and the overarching answer is there's less water. We're in a drought. There's just less water to go around. The more nuanced answer, I can't really speak for Pahranagat, but their water deliveries don't really start until October 1st. And upstream users are changing irrigation practices, and so there's less water being delivered that we can put on, that Pahranagat can put on those lakes. For Key Pittman, the farming practices have changed upstream a bit there as well, and with the drought, they're using more water, and so there's less water available at Key Pittman. We are planning to put in a main irrigation well. There's plans to put that in and utilize our water rights, which should help alleviate that in the long term, but probably not in the short term. So the water, I'm not completely familiar with Key Pittman, but I think it's Frenchie that's completely dry. Is that right at Key Pittman? The water that we do have is being prioritized to go into Nesbit, and so Frenchie is dry. But I know I've noticed that driving through there the last couple of times I've been there as well.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from any other commissioners, anybody? All right, thank you very much, appreciate it. Good morning.
Riley Dunavant, GIS Analyst 3, representing Data and Technology Services. As of this week, staff have processed a total of 1,734 tag returns, of which 934 of these tags were reissued through the First Come, First Served program. An additional 156 junior mule deer tags have been sold through First Come, First Served that remained after the second draw. There are approximately 439 remaining junior primitive tags available through First Come, First Served for any juniors still wanting to hunt this year. The Sheldon Special Sage Grouse Draw was completed on August 20th, and results were released to customers on August 22nd, 2025. A total of 224 customers applied, and 40 permits were awarded through the random draw.
All right. How about any questions for Data and Technology Services? Yes, Commissioner Keel.
Yeah, thanks for that report. I see in the notes you guys are planning on updating the hard copies of the Gessler maps. When do you expect those to be out or available?
Our team is currently working on producing those maps. We are still in the early stages, so we're hoping here in the coming months, but definitely in the early stages of a project. It's hard to say.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Cavilla.
Yeah, I guess not so much a question, but more a comment. Looking at the amount of junior primitive mule deer tags that basically remained in the First Come, First Served. I know this is like a kind of in its infancy where we have those tags. So obviously, I think next year when we go to the season setting and quota setting, we can look to make an adjustment there. Obviously, the demand's not there for that primitive component of that. So yeah, just a comment.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Anything? Yeah, Vice Chair Young?
Thank you, Chair Rogers. As to the First Come, First Serve, is that up, down, in the middle from what we're usually seeing as the number of tags being returned? Up. I'm getting the up sign from phone a friend.
Okay, I will need to phone a friend on this one.
I'll take it as it's up. We have more First Come, First Serve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't know we were going to ask you questions and throw you some curveballs, did you? All right. Anything else from the commission? All right. Seeing none, thank you so much for that presentation. All right. Anything else, Director Janae, before we move on?
Nope, that's the end of the report. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Chairman Rogers?
Yes, sir.
Doug Nielsen, Southern Region Con Ed Supervisor for the record. In answer to your question on social media and small game regulations, it went out August 19th.
Oh, perfect. Good. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now on to agenda item, this is 7B. This is litigation report. Deputy Attorney General Craig Burkett. The report will be provided on the Department of Wildlife litigation. So, Dag Burkett.
As has been the case for quite a while, this is a very, very short report. We did file an answering brief in the Pershing County Water Conservation District case before the Nevada Supreme Court. I filed that this week with Water Resources. So we are almost done with the briefing stage, and we probably should get some resolution from the court within the next 3 to 6 months, depending on the court's interest in our case. Other than that, I have nothing to report and be happy to answer any questions.
All right, good. Any questions from the commission at all for Dag Burkett? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and move on to item 7C. This is tag allocation and application hunt committee report. Committee Chairman Tommy Caviglia, a report will be provided on the recent TAC meeting. So Commissioner Caviglia.
Thank you, Chair. So the TAC committee met on Tuesday this week. We had basically just had 2 items on the agenda. One was mountain lion harvest survey check-in, and then one was shed antler regulations. The results of that meeting on the department provided the new format for the harvest questionnaire. The committee had asked, the committee liked that and asked for that to be sent to the commission for review at the commission level. Also on that, the committee had directed the department to look into doing a non-harvest questionnaire for the unsuccessful lion tag holders. So on a future TAC committee meeting, we're going to look at that, doing a non-harvest questionnaire as well. In regards to the shed antler regulation, the department brought forward some proposed language on that. One of the major items that we looked at was the pushing back on the shed antler season on the non-resident side, pushing that back a month behind the residents. And then the department is also going to look at some adding some teeth on this for the enforcement side in the NAC. So that shed antler regulation is still at the TAC level as well. So those 2 items, the non-harvest questionnaire and the shed antler regulations are still ongoing at TAC.
All right, perfect. Good. Thank you for that. How about questions? There's a lot going on in TAC committee meeting, a lot of discussion. Anything from the commission at this time? Questions, concerns, comments on any of that? All right. Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you for that report. We'll move on to 7D. This is application and hunt statistics report. Gordon Darby Representative Zach Lambert and Data and Technology Services Division Administrator Megan Manfredi, the department licensing vendor that accepts hunt applications and conducts the random draw for hunt tags, will provide an overview of this year's application and hunt statistics conducting the random draw. So welcome, good morning.
Thank you and good morning. So for the record, Zach Lambert with Gordon Darby, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak in front of the commission. I know there's a few newer faces here that I haven't had a chance to speak in front of, so I'm not sure if that was me or not. But I just want to briefly tell you a little bit about Gordon Darby and who we are. So we're based in Louisville, Kentucky. We've been in business for over 40 years. And our business model is based on servicing government contracts. One such industry that we do service is hunting and fishing license automation. Since 2018, we've had the contract with the department to run the license and registration system. Most visibly of that includes the big game draw process for the Nevada Department of Wildlife. In addition to Nevada, we operate several other contracts with the state of Texas and the state of New York. So we have 3 states that use our systems for their hunting and fishing license automation today. Our goal in the hunt and fish license automation industry is not to be the largest company in the space. We don't want to just service as many states as we can get our hands on. We would rather have a smaller core group of states that we can have a really deep relationship with and grow with. And we measure our own success based on, whether or not the Department of Wildlife sees us as an extension of their agency, and if we're helping to not only meet but exceed their goals that they have for our program. And I would hope that those of the department would at least say we're on track in doing that. This is the 8th year I've had the chance to come and give this presentation, and each time I get to do this, have a great sense of personal pride in what we've been able to accomplish with Endow, and I'm really excited to share that with you. So thank you. Arrows here.
And actually, before I have you continue, looking at the monitors here for the gentleman, I think is maybe our IT person, of all the monitors that are in front of the commissioners, I think one is working. Is there something we need to do on our end here to, we've got a hard copy. I think most everybody has a hard copy, but no, just one monitor up here has the image on it in presentation. No. Well, they're on, but nothing.
Please wait for the clerk to set up the meeting.
All right. There's our guy.
This one's good.
This one's not.
All right.
Wonderful.
Good to proceed, or? All right.
Yes, we're good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So I just want to share some, high-level highlights from the 2025 draw. Again, one thing that we're really excited about is we're seeing less and less people call to need help submitting their application on endowlicensing.com. I think last year I came up here and shared that we were down 10% in calls for help during our peak season. We're down 6% from that number last year. So that's a metric that we're always looking at is, application to help rate, and we're continuing to see that go down, which we're happy about. The last 2 days of the application period, we received over 120,000 applications. I believe that is the most we've ever seen in that final 48 hours of the application period. We invest a lot of time and resources to make sure that our infrastructure and systems are up, running, able to handle the traffic. And in the 8 years that we've had that mad rush there at the end, I'm proud to say we've never had the system go down, and we've never had to extend a deadline for the application period. This year, we implemented a bilingual customer service option. So if an individual were to call for help and would prefer to get help in Spanish, we now offer that to the public. And as a part of our, bilingual capabilities, one thing that we are working on currently and in the testing phases of is making endowlicensing.com bilingual to offer a Spanish language option to those who would prefer that as well. Last but not least, one thing we also implemented this year was a text messaging option for those who draw an alternate tag. We've always emailed and charged somebody's card, but now if you're opted in to receive text messages from us, you'll also get a text message letting you know that you received an alternate tag. So we've had the contract for since 2018, and in that time, not only the draw, but in license sales in general, we've seen Endow sales increase significantly. Since 2018, we are up 65% on the number of applications that are being put in for the big game draw, and 24% up in the number of individuals who apply for the draw on an annual basis. We're seeing that customers are investing more into the system. an average order value of $43 spent in 2018. We're seeing folks submit more applications on average, all the way up to $88 now. And that's without a fee increase. That's just with, more opportunity to apply, people putting in for more when they put in for the draw. And again, like I said, 38% up on the number of applications per individual. I do not have this in my presentation, but one other interesting number that I did pull, and this is preliminary based on 2024 numbers, the number of licensed hunters in Nevada since 2018 has increased by 33%, and the number of licensed anglers in Nevada has increased by 19%. That is post-license simplification. If you go back pre-license simplification, it's even larger than that. And so I thought that was a great thing to share there as well. And disclaimer, we haven't submitted 2024 numbers to the feds yet, but that is what it is looking like on preliminary reports. So we mentioned, we're up in the number of people who applied this year. This year, 86,283 people applied for a tag in Nevada. And you can see here the breakdown of the age of those who are applying compared to last year. And application-wise, this year we had 489,254 applications submitted. That includes bonus point applications, tag applications, party applications. We're counting each individual's application there. That this year is without anything new to apply for. So we've seen growth every year where maybe you added in some of the management ram hunts, the moose hunt. This year, the only new application was the junior horn shorter than ears, but those juniors could still apply for horn shorter than ears last year. So this is, true organic growth in the number of applications that are being received. And you can see how that trend has progressed since the start of the contract in 2018. And then I touched on it earlier, an average of $88 spent per individual when applying for tags. This is a breakdown of your resident applicants by county. And we're also showing a comparison to the 3-year average from 22 to 24. And, you'll see some large swings in there. Mineral County looks like it's down almost 15%. That's, 41 individuals, so you got to take in relative percentages into account. But overall, the change from the 3-year average is 1% less residents putting in for a tag. So that's something that we'll continue to monitor and take a look at. But for non-residents, we have somebody apply every year from every U.S. state. And we have, even you can see Delaware, 9 people, Rhode Island, 6 people. So we're always happy to see that somebody from every state is interested in, what Nevada has to offer in terms of, hunting opportunities. We also have a decent amount of international customers who apply, most notably, good amount from Canada, this year Australia, Mexico, New Zealand, Denmark, Sweden, and the UK. So getting into each species, I won't read every single number verbatim, but just to show you what we're looking at, the orange here is your number of unsuccessful applications, the green is your point-only applications, and the blue line is following a relative scale of awarded tags. So the axis on the left is going to show you the number of applications. On the right is going to show you the number of successful applications or awards. So for Desert U applications this year, just over or under 2,900 for a tag, 100 awarded, and just over 2,000 point-only applications. For Desert Ram applications, you're looking at almost 44,000 applications for a tag with 231 tags awarded and just a little less than 14,000 bonus point-only applications. California Ram applications, just over 32,000 applications for a California Ram tag, 12,600 point-only and 41 tags awarded. And Rocky Mountain Ram, three tags awarded, little over 9,000 applications submitted, and a little over 7,200 apps for a point only. Mountain Goat, over about 20,500 applications for a tag, and 8,800 applications for a point only, roughly. Black Bear applications, about 5,500 applications for a tag, 42 tags drawn, and about 5,400 applications for a point only. Elk, when we're looking at elk here, you'll see, quick math in my head here, close to 88,000 applications for a tag, 4,655 tags drawn, and little less than 32,000 applications for a point only. That includes bull elk, cow elk, your depredation hunts, and spike elk. And antelope, this is excluding junior horn shorter than yours. We've broken that out separately in our report. But this does include horns longer than yours and horns shorter than yours for those over the age of 18. What is interesting is even taking out the junior bucket of that, this still kind of ticked up a little bit for applications. So 3,620 pronghorn antelope tags awarded, 52,500 unsuccessful applications, and just under 19,000 point-only applications. So junior horn shorter than yours. So we don't have historical data on what this hunt has looked like when it's been split out as its own application, but this year 1,313 applications for a junior horn shorter tag. All 850 that were set in the May commission meeting, the quota was used up in the draw, and 850 juniors drew those tags. 463 were unsuccessful, and we did receive 48 bonus point only apps from juniors. And here is that age breakdown. So you can see with the 850 tags, about 35% of juniors were unsuccessful, 65% of juniors were successful in obtaining a junior horn shorter than yours tag. And with mule deer, I need to call something out on this. This does exclude junior hunts. And because of the way we're using the scale for the awarded tags, you'll see the orange and green bar for 2025 looks lower than the orange and green bar for 2024. But with the tag increases, if you add it all up, we do have more mule deer applications this year, though visually it kind of skews it with the way the awarded line goes up on that scale. So 71,000 unsuccessful applications, 10,779 tags awarded, and just a little over 18,000 bonus point apps for a mule deer. Now with junior mule deer, we had a lot more tags in the draw this year in this category, but you can see here from a tags awarded in the main draw perspective, we're only up more by one here, and I'll get into like the leftover statistics after that. But 2,105 applicants for a junior deer tag in the draw drew at that time, 96 point only applications, and 1,417 unsuccessful. So from the main draw, 3,522 applications for a junior deer tag, 2,105 juniors drew a tag, 1,417 did not draw a tag, and we had 790 leftover tags go into the second draw. And I won't read them all, but you can see what those tags were, what the hunts were, and how many tags were left over for the second draw. After the second draw, if you look at every resident junior who put in for a deer tag, we go up to 2,300 successful juniors and just a little over 1,200 unsuccessful juniors, with still 595 of those tags left over, which we put into the first come, first serve program so folks could have that opportunity. And this, we like to provide the report, a week in advance or so, so we have it for support material, but So at the time this report was created, you're down to 1,078 unsuccessful juniors, looking at that group of folks who took it from the main draw, the second draw, and through first come, first serve, with 451 leftover tags remaining. And I believe when the prior update was given, that's gone down just a little bit more. So from the main draw, what you're looking at is about a 60% success rate for junior deer. And there's it broken down by age. After the second draw and first come, first serve, we're getting close to a 70% success rate, or tag holder rate, if you will, for resident junior hunters. Last but not least, moose. With only 2 years of data, I'm just going to continue to show this standalone, but just under 5,400 point only applications, 2 tags drawn, 18,536 unsuccessful apps, and so total just under 24,000 for a moose tag. Silver State application revenue, you can see that is continuing to trend up. This includes all of the fees for Silver State applications, but you can see in every species category, we're still trending up in the revenue raised and the number of applications being submitted there. Number of tags per hunter. So with the quota increase, I think it would be expected that we would see more hunters draw more than 1 tag. So this year we did have nobody draw 0 tags. We had 9 people draw 4 tags, 299 people draw 3 tags, 3,043 draw 2 tags, and 15,427 people draw a single tag. And here is the breakdown of the 9 who drew 4 tags. And you can see which ones had been returned by that individual. This year, we're continuing to see more folks put in for tags on a mobile device, so inching up towards 56% of individuals prefer to use a mobile device when putting in for tags. And, we always like to track what type of mobile devices people are using. Different operating systems handle website content differently, so we're seeing about 73% of those applying on an iPhone and 27% applying on an Android device. And we also track our most used browsers by our applicants for browser compatibility purposes. So we like to look at our customers, and every year our lost customer category, despite the growth in the number of people applying, we're always around 12,500 of those who applied last year and didn't apply this year. It would only be speculation for me to try and give a reason for that, but I have to wonder if some of that is non-residents who maybe try and put in every other year just to split out the cost of applying across the West. But 12,500 folks applied in 2024 but did not apply in 2025. New customer recruitment, just over 7,300 applied for a tag for the first time in 2025. And 73,133 people applied in 24 and applied in 25. And one thing that we're always happy about, reactivated customers. So 5,846 people did not apply in 2024, but they had applied in the past. They came back in 2025 to submit an application. Always like to give an update on the preferences of our customers. So we have the information sharing preference. 96% of customers still opt to keep their information private. 4% allow their information to be shared. For draw results delivery, 58% of customers would prefer to keep their draw results off of the public list, while 42% prefer to keep them on the public list. And as far as our $3 fee preference, this year we're looking at 63% of applicants chose to put their $3 towards the lethal removal of predatory wildlife, and 37% to wildlife habitat and research. And I think with that, I'll take any questions that the commission may have.
All right, thank you for that presentation. Any questions from the commission at all? Yeah, Vice Chair Young?
Thank you, Chair Rogers, and thank you, Mr. Lamb, for the presentation. I probably say this every year. I put in to several western states during app season in the springtime, and we are definitely the best, in my opinion. I might be biased on that, but it's the easiest, user-friendly platform, and I really wish other states would use Gordon Darby to make it a little easier. With that, I don't have a question on the presentation, but in the last meeting when Mr. Maples was presenting on the junior tags, he came up with a statistic that said if we were to break out the junior mule deer and junior horn shorter and spread it across it, 98% of the juniors would be able to get a tag, which I'm very supportive of getting as many tags in juniors' hands as we can. With that, how difficult of a lift on your end would it be to break it down where I would assume we would draw, if we were to go forward with this, draw the junior mule deer first. Whoever draws that is then now out of the horn shorter, and then you draw the horn shorter. So instead of having some youth with 2 tags, you have every youth with a tag, or 98%. How difficult would that be?
Thank you for the question. And I just want to make sure before I go on record with an answer, all you're saying is keep junior mule deer at the top. That is what we draw first. Put junior horn shorter at the bottom, which we do today, but the only change would be if you drew a junior deer tag, you would not be able to draw a junior horn shorter tag. Is that
Correct.
I could do that in about 15 minutes. When the commission voted, I think it was in 2019 or 2021, I forget, to go with a draw order, we built it out so that we could accommodate additional groups in order of the draw because we anticipated that changing. So that's more of a settings change than a coding change. So that's something we could accommodate if that were to come out of the commission.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, Ms. Manfredi?
Yes, Megan Manfredi for the record. If that is the direction the commission would like, we do hear those regulations annually in January, where it does exclude, let's say, like you can only draw 1 elk tag, and it'll exclude you from others. We can add that if that is the preference of the commission in those annual regulations to implement that change.
All right, anything else? Yes, Commissioner Keel?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Rogers. And I've kind of got a follow-up question to that, Mr. Lambert. So when we look at I think it's currently like 1,200 unsuccessful juniors with the deer and 300 or 400 on the antelope. If we combine those together, what would be the unsuccessful juniors?
You know what? Unfortunately, I woke up this morning probably knowing I was going to be asked that question, and I don't have the answer for that. I will get that to Megan and Matt to share with the commission as soon as possible.
No, that's great. And yeah, sorry to put you on the spot asking for a specific number, but I guess to Commissioner Young's comment, sorry about that. So if the junior drew a deer tag, they're ineligible for the horn shorter than ears, at least on the first pass, right? I mean, if there were still leftover horn shorter than ears after the remaining eligible juniors all drew, could that second pot go back in and be redrawn, or does that have to go to a first come, first serve?
As far as a redraw goes in the same draw run, I don't know if that's like a reg or a statute or anything that prescribes how the draw is supposed to work in that manner, but in terms of a leftover like we do today, no problem.
Okay.
So for the draw itself, 1 junior tag, leftover, have at it. We could do something like that.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Commissioner Messna?
Quick question, just assuming if we did go down this path, just like all other, instances where your name is pulled out of the hat, the youth would then receive a bonus point for, if they drew a deer tag and then that pulled them out for the antelope tag, they would just then receive a bonus point?
We would treat them as if they were unsuccessful.
If they just became unsuccessful for that, if their name was pulled out of the hat, and they would get a bonus point just like the rest of the framework works, correct?
Yep.
Good. Commissioner Caviglia?
Yeah, not really a question, Zach, but just a comment, like overall, the trends are awesome, but now I know why my draw odds really suck. Because they just, every year since I've been on the commission, it just, and I hear people tell me all the time, oh, people are dropping out, and it's not the reality of the situation at all. It's not. So, I mean, it is awesome, but it also sucks wanting to draw tags.
I can make it harder to apply if you'd like.
Anything else from the commission? I just had a couple things. One is, I'd echo what Vice Chair Young said, and that is, I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. You know, as I travel around and talk to folks, certainly non-residents, I can't tell you how many people that have said, geez, and even residents for that matter, but geez, how simple and easy Nevada's process is. And I hate to take away credit from you, but for some reason they perceive that myself as chair, I'm responsible for that. So I take full credit for that, just to let you know. But no, the responses I've got is just fantastic from individuals, so I commend that. But the one question I had, and it's, I think I've seen it in the past, in the one slide that you show that the majority of people are utilizing a handheld device versus a desktop. And I'm just curious what, if anything, you're doing or have planned for the future, knowing that trend is continuing, what you have planned, if anything, for the future to continue to make that easier, if you will, for handheld devices as technology advances and everything else?
I do know there is a future roadmap for a native public-facing mobile application. I don't have timelines on that. I think we're still working out some of the finer details with NDOW, but that would be as a part of the ETAG process. Now, for submitting applications through a mobile application, in-app purchases can be tricky with how much Apple and Google want to take off the top of that purchase. I think there maybe are exemptions for government agencies in that, but you know, if you look at other states with their apps, usually when you go to like a state's app and you click buy licenses, it looks like you're in the app, but you're iframing out to the website, you know, just within the app where you're making that purchase. So that's something we just have to work together with NDOW on and figure out the best solution there. But yeah.
All right, perfect. Good. Anything else from the commission? Seeing none?
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
Appreciate
We
it.
really appreciate it. All right. Let's see here. Where are we at? That finishes up 7D, and we're on to 7E, and that is Department Project Donation Guidance Update. Secretary Janae, the department will give an update on the status of the agency's project donation guidance. So, Director Janae.
You bet. Thank you. For the record, Alan Janae. We put this on here mostly in the spirit of transparency. We are still working on this document, having discussions with our division administrators. We are working through our department policy, which is our donation, gift, and bequest policy, and trying to line out how to deal with the particulars of a situation, much as what we saw with this last Muddy's capture, where we had multiple entities involved, and trying to get to that place of, you know, making sure that there's guidance, that coordination amongst all of the parties that are involved, and then, but not trying to take away also those opportunities where, you know, there are exclusive opportunities where we've worked in the past with many different NGOs who nobody else really cared about a project, and they were the sole funding source, and they had those exclusive rights. And so we're walking that line and trying to have those discussions with our division administrators to see the particulars in each of their divisions before we make a decision. Initially, we were thinking about something that was an overarching call out within the policy, the department policy, and then pushing it out as divisional directives so that the nuance of each division could kind of address their specific situation. We've been discussing the merits of that, and what we're hoping for is by the November meeting is that we will have drafts of wherever we end with this, out to NGOs that we typically partner with for their feedback, and be able to give you guys an update and a copy of what we're doing at that November meeting. But that's basically the report that I have. I can take any questions or comments that the commission may have, but just really wanted to, just knowing that this was a little bit of an item in Ely, wanted to make sure that we gave you an update.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. How about from the commission, any questions regarding that? I know we'll continue to hear more on that, but any questions, comments at this time? All right, seeing none, thank you for that, Director Janae. All right, so we have been going for an hour and a half or so now. Maybe let's take a little bit of break before we go on to agenda item number 8. So maybe it's a little before 10 o'clock here, maybe a 15-minute break or so, maybe come back at 10:15. Is that all right with everybody? Great, you bet.
Sent me a text, he says, I don't know how to work it, but he's on there. Brian Hooper's who it is. No, he just wanted. Yeah, yeah. That's Humboldt County cab, yeah. He just not very computer literate, but that's him.
Doubtful. Okay, let's go, excuse me, let's go ahead and get started again here. I think we've got everybody. All right, so we will carry on here. We are now on to agenda item number 8, and this is petition Mr. Gregory Dicker, Mrs. Kimberly Dicker for possible action, Ms. Tracy Lee Pintar, and Mr. James Thomas Pintar. The department has received 2 petitions requesting an amendment to Nevada Administrative Code NAC 503.1465 regarding archery disability permits. Both petitions propose distinguishing permanent and temporary disabilities and recommend establishing expiration dates for the temporary permits. So with that, is the petitioner here today?
Yes, my name is Gregory Dicker.
And I'm Kimberly Dicker.
All right, good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, members of the commission. We'd like to explain the situation here. My wife and I are both permanently disabled. Of course, we received a letter from the commission, from the department, telling us that our permits had been revoked, I guess. And both of our applications stated specifically that we were permanently disabled, unable to draw a regular bow or a compound, unfortunately. And we feel that once a year, reapplying for the permit is pretty cost prohibitive. It costs us about $350 for the 2 of us. We're both retired and on fixed incomes. And we have both held permits in California, Arizona, and New Mexico since I think around 2014. And what we'd like to propose is that if it says permanently disabled and it's been filled out by a doctor, then you're permanently disabled. And maybe making it 5 years for a reevaluation for those people. For people that are temporarily disabled, every year sounds good because maybe they can get better, but we're beyond that, my wife and I. I appreciate you listening to what I have to say. Let my wife take over here. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that because certainly some people are permanently disabled. Let's say somebody in a wheelchair, somebody who only has one arm. So it seems reasonable that some people should be able to have the permanent disability qualification without having to go to the doctor every year and pay for that. That's all I had to say. Thanks.
But we'd like to be reinstated, possibly. Thank you. Sorry.
All right. No other, were the other petitioners online at all, Alejandra? So nothing from the Pintars. All right, easy enough. Anything else from Mr. or Mrs. Dicker at this time? All right. So with that, Ms. Manfredi, did you have?
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the Commission, Management Analyst Megan Manfredi, speaking on behalf of the department. So the department is open to making changes to regulations, as we do recognize areas in need of updating for the benefit of both NDOT and our permanently disabled customers. So we are agreeable to regulation review of the programs if the Commission were to accept the petition. And when I say programs, we would also request, yes, the archery disability permit as mentioned in the petition, but our visual disability permit and our special assistance permit could also have a similar review. So if the commission accepts the petition, we are agreeable to doing that.
All right, perfect. Thank you for that. With that, how about any questions from the commission or comments? Zolfo, yeah, Commissioner Mesna?
Yeah, sorry if I ask something here that is unnecessary, but how are we separating a temporary disability in this and requiring a permit and where somebody can just apply to delay their tag? If something has come up and you can, postpone or delay your tag, wouldn't that, are we talking, if it's time for a review, it seems like we should be kind of separating the items into categories that they should be in now that we have, other avenues that are going on. A disability is a disability and an injury is an injury. And I'm having trouble, what is a temporary disability versus just an injury? And it seems like, I don't know if that's just what.
Thank you for that question. Management Analyst Megan Manfredi for the record again. So we do have a separate program that allows if an individual or an injury happens specifically to, depending on a time frame, an individual can defer their tag to the next following season, but that would be a different program outside of the, I guess, archery disability permit. So yes.
Thank you.
All right, anything else from the commission at this time? Yeah, Commissioner Revelli?
Yeah, I just speaking for myself, I'm not opposed to opening this up for discussion. I know when we changed this, whatever it was, a year or two ago, part of the change was, and it's like anything the commission gets to look at, is the gaming of the system. That's why we changed it. And obviously, I do like, some of the proposed language defining temporary versus permanent, and maybe like the permanent doing a 5-year review. But I know this isn't, I think even the state of Arizona recently tweaked their language on archery disability permits for that sole reason of the gaming component that's there. So I'm absolutely open to have that conversation, but we're just keeping that in mind that we have to be real cautious of how we proceed. Yeah, because that's why we changed it recently as well, was the perceived notion of there's some folks gaming that. So. But yeah, I'm not opposed to looking at it.
All right, perfect. Thank you. It's all coming back to me now, the conversation. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Anything else from the commission at this time? All right, seeing none, this is a possible action item, so let me send it out to public comment and see if there's any public comment here in Las Vegas regarding, again, this particular petition.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark Cab. We had good discussion on this. One of the things is Lieutenant Walther was there, and he basically went into the regulation when you were asking about temporary versus permanent disability. Those are defined in NAC right now to what they mean. So I think actually making that distinction, if you wanted to do that, would be fairly there. And we were also in support of having permanent be something that if you're permanently disabled, I think once you're labeled that, I don't think you should ever have to go back and reaffirm that. If a doctor writes a note and says you're permanently disabled, and on a temporary, having to reaffirm that on a yearly basis seemed reasonable to us. The question is that there's disabilities, and it wasn't in regulations such as PTSD. How does that fit into a disability thing? If that's permanent, does that allow you to do things differently? Or is it just the physical part? Because that's a question that I couldn't answer. And if you or maybe legal has an answer to that one, I don't know the answer to that one. And so I just thought I'd bring it up here for that one, because that was clearly raised by a member of the public, and I said, I'll ask, but I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. For the record, Jim Cooney, members of the commission. The Elko Cab is in support of this concept that has been presented. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney. Anyone else here in Las Vegas? Public comment? All right, seeing none here in Vegas. How about any public comment via Zoom?
Mr. Commissioner, sir? This is Greg Dicker again. I'm sorry to interrupt. But, it's like my wife and I, we have permanent right shoulder injuries, which keeps us from drawing a bow, you know? That's all I wanted to say on that. And I agree with like PTSD and certain other things, leg injuries or something, that shouldn't have anything to do with somebody's ability to draw a bow. Anyway, thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you. Any public comment via Zoom, Alejandra? Nothing? Okay. We'll bring it back to the commission. Dag Brigette, did you want to wade into that at all at this time, or?
I was just going to share that certainly psychological disorders are considered a disability under the ADA. So that would be, I mean, the commission has a choice to define lines and create black and white, where you decide that maybe perhaps you don't want psychological disorders to be considered as part of this application, or you do. I mean, it's entirely up to you how you want to frame it. But it is considered a disorder, or a disability, sorry.
All right, perfect. All right, I'll bring it back to the commission for any other thoughts or comments or questions. My only comment is I'm kind of like Commissioner Caviglia. I think is it worth, having the conversation and look, I think like with most anything, we can start getting in the weeds on stuff, on what is and what isn't, but I'm on first swipe on this, I am certainly supportive of it, at least having a conversation and seeing if we can maybe tighten up some of those, some of that language in there to facilitate some of these items. So anyway, I'm supportive of it. Anybody else from the commission? Questions, comments? What's the flavor on moving forward? Anybody? Yeah, Commissioner Caviglia.
So with that, if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to accept the petition, to open up the conversation with NAC 503.1465, but also basically all disability permits in general. We'll open up the conversation for a future review of that regulation at the commission level.
All right, perfect. So we have a motion from Commissioner Caviglia. We have a second from Commissioner Bourne. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right. That passes. Thank you for that. All right, we will move on now to agenda item 9. This is adaptive population objective, addendum number 2 for possible action. This is adaptive population objectives, the elk species management plan. Wildlife Staff Specialist Cody McKee. The department will present addendum number 2 of the statewide elk management plan, which defines the proposed process for adaptive population objectives for existing elk populations. Addendum number 2 will be considered for adoption at a future commission meeting. So, good morning, Mr. McKee.
Thanks, Chairman Rogers. Cody McKee, Staff Specialist, Game Division, for the record. First off, just want to extend a welcome to Commissioners Mesna and Munn. I was not in Ely, so we didn't get a chance to catch up. A lot of the information that we're talking about predates your tenure, and so feel free to ask questions, or if you need clarification, I'm happy to provide that. And then also, just before we get started, I wanted to clarify that what we're discussing today is for established elk herds. And I think in our elk commission policy, I think it's 26, we define an established elk herd as one that has already been defined and delineated within an existing elk subplan. So with respect to pioneering elk herds, or even those that have been classified as a de-emphasis or an elk-free zone, we're excluding those elk populations from this process. They would require a more comprehensive subplan revision. So just for a little bit of background, and taking us back the last several months, in June 2025, the department provided the commission with an overview of potential actions that could be taken in response to Elko CAB's request to revise several subplans that pertain to Elko County. The department provided three actions. One would be that there was no response to that request. The other action would be that we followed a traditional subplan revision. That's Addendum 1 that was adopted in 2006. It's a very comprehensive process. I think it involves 11 steps, 20 different members of a coordination and oversight team, and can be quite lengthy in time to get to. And then finally, the department provided a third alternative, which is essentially the direct evaluation of population objectives. So what are the maximum allowable numbers for those established elk herds? And the commission selected alternative 3, and that was with the desire to modernize and streamline the process for adjusting these elk population objectives. And this is in response to changing social and environmental conditions. And we're also decoupling this process for population objectives, so the discussion of elk numbers for established elk herds from that lengthy subplanning process, so that we can get to desired outcomes a little bit quicker. We did include this proposed process within the support materials for Agenda 9. And then this is obviously subject to change. It's very preliminary, pending stakeholder input, the commission's input, and public comment. And then hopefully come November, we'll be able to take that input and provide the commission with one that you may decide to adopt or make changes to in November. All right, so some of the process highlights that I wanted to focus on is one, the establishment of this elk management subcommittee. The reality is we've had an elk management subcommittee for some time. It's been, it's the elk damage management and incentive subcommittee, which hasn't met since I believe 2017. So essentially what we would like to do is resurrect and reinvigorate this committee to not only address this adaptive population objective process, but also provide a venue for stakeholders to bring problems to the department so that we can discuss these emerging issues. I see this as a transparent process. We've identified 3 members representing farming and ranching communities, as well as sportsmen and conservation. So hopefully everybody has a seat at the table to provide input on the process. And we're ensuring that we're taking in everybody's perspectives to ensure the outcomes are positive and not negative for certain individuals and organizations. We've proposed incremental population changes. So opposite or unlike what was done with subplans where a fixed population objective was established, and that was the value that was worked towards, and once we achieved that value, populations remain stable. We're proposing these adjustments being very incremental so that one change does not cause catastrophic or unforeseen circumstances on the other end. And that can be a 10% increase. It could be up to a 10% decrease or no change from previous years. And we're using the starting point of the 2025 population estimates. So should this process be moved forward and adopted starting in January, we would be using the 2025 population estimates as the beginning and the basis for adjustments. And then finally, as discussed last June, we are working on a revision of the statewide elk species management plan. It's a content-driven process so that we can provide a better understanding of the various management techniques and understanding of our elk herds here in the state to the public. We're proposing this adaptive population process as being an addendum 2 to the existing elk species management plan. The reason that we're proposing to do this addendum 2 in parallel to that revision is so that one hiccup or delay for one product doesn't delay the other. So we can move forward with this as addendum 2 for adoption potentially in the future. Meanwhile, we'll continue to work on that elk species management plan. Should this adaptive population process be adopted, when we finalize the elk species management plan revision, we will incorporate this content into that document to make sure that it's carried forward. Okay, so I wanted to provide just a process example of what this might look like for a given area within the state. The map that I've shown here in blue depicts all of those established elk populations that were identified within subplans. The cross-hashed areas, those are areas that have been identified as de-emphasis areas or elk-free zones. So they're places that we actively try to keep elk out of. And again, this process would not apply to those areas. I want to talk about the 104, 108, 121 elk group. Just for simplicity's sake, we'll look at one example. This process would apply to all of these established elk areas. And this is roughly the Cherry Creek Range, and mostly residing in White Pine County. All right, so beginning in January, the Elk Management Subcommittee, comprised of 4 members from the commission as well as 2 public representatives, would meet. The reason being, that's when the department establishes seasons. So the Elk Management Subcommittee could meet. The department would provide information pertaining to these particular elk herds. We would provide a venue for stakeholders to provide input, or even, if there's issues that could be addressed or discussed at that time, we have that opportunity made available. So the subcommittee would evaluate preliminary information. We won't have everything in January, but it's a starting point for discussion. So something like population estimates might be reviewed. So for this elk herd in particular, on the vertical axis, you'll see the population estimate, and then on the horizontal, that's the year. And you'll note that there's been very little change in this population over the last 3 years. And when I plug on this yellow line, which that is the population objective of just over 900 elk, you probably have a better understanding of why there has not been any change. That is, we've held this population just at 900 elk for successive years. Additionally, we might want to consider some of these depredation hunt trends. That is, what kind of conflicts might be occurring on the landscape that the subcommittee should be aware of that might be affecting stakeholders within the hunt unit. So this graph in the bars shows the depredation tags issued, which can be related to that vertical axis on the left, and then years on the bottom. The purple line, which is reference to the right vertical axis, is hunter success. So you'll note over the last 3 years, we did reduce the number of depredation tags for this area, but there has been a concurrent increase in hunter success on those tags. So that may indicate that for whatever reason, elk are keying in more on these depredation hunt areas, potentially may be indicative of problems occurring on the landscape. Another example of the information that we could discuss would be expenditures from our elk damage mitigation account. This graph is showing the amount of money that was put into the area because of problems caused by elk. And you'll note that in 2023, that purple bar shows about $120,000 in expenditures. We built a new elk exclusionary fence on the north end of the Cherry Creek Range that comprises that entire expenditure. Since that time, we have not spent any money out of the elk damage mitigation account within this hunt area, so we haven't written checks to any landowners for damage, and we haven't built any additional infrastructure to keep elk off of unwanted places. So after this information is evaluated In January, we would come back again in March to the same body, the Elk Management Subcommittee. We would provide any updated information in March. At the March meeting, we'll have population estimates, we'll have bull to cow ratios, we may have a better understanding of potential conflicts that might be occurring. The Elk Management Subcommittee, comprising the various stakeholders, would then make a recommendation to the Wildlife Commission based off of this information, whether that population could be increased by up to 10%, decreased by up to 10%, or potentially based off of the information that is evaluated, that population would not change the following year. The department would then would then incorporate that recommendation into our annual quota recommendation for the commission to review in May, trying to hit whatever target has been identified by the subcommittee, who would then present that to the commission for final approval. And then here I just show in 2026, should the commission approve a 10% incremental increase to allowable levels, you might see that population increase by about 90 adults the following year. So I just want to reflect a little bit on the elk plan itself. On page 59, there's a statement, and this was authored by not just department staff, but representatives from ranching, farming, sporting communities, that the authors intended to make the Elk Species Management Plan a dynamic working document that's responsive to new data, new ideas, and changing environmental or political considerations. So even back in 1997, they realized that things might change. And I believe that this vision very much applies to what we have proposed. We're evolving to this change, and we're trying to do, we're doing our best to be adaptive to changing times and present a solution that works for everyone while ensuring that all voices are being incorporated in the process. And so with that, I am happy to stand for any questions that the commission might have.
All righty, thank you for that. Appreciate that. How about to the commission? Questions? Commissioner Bourne? Yes, sir.
Yes, Cody, thank you for that presentation. My first question is on the Bruno herd. There's asterisks. That reads, allowable population levels are based on vegetative monitoring last completed in 2017. How are you adjusting that population given the fact that there's been a huge amount of change environmentally since 2017?
Yeah, Commissioner Warren, Cody McKee for the record. That's a really good question. So in 2017, when we completed the assessment, the population, I don't have the population estimate at hand, but it wasn't that much different than what the current estimate is. And at the time, the finding from that evaluation was that there was very little impacts by elk that could be differentiated from any of the other user groups on the landscape. So there's historic grazing and historic sheep herding in the area as well. We have not conducted an assessment for that area since then, but we've been using the preponderance of conflicts or complaints from landowners, and we just have not had that many from the area to feel like the numbers were getting out of hand. So it's been kind of it's been a little bit in flux. Primarily, that existing Bruno plan required the federal land managers to conduct that monitoring, which they'd been unable to achieve. So we had funded it in 2017 and just have not been back to do it since.
Yep. Deputy Director McAdoo.
Yeah, for the record, Caleb McAdoo. I guess just to tie onto that a little bit further, the department has also made changes on our state-owned lands at the Bruno Wildlife Management Area. bringing back irrigation practices onto our meadows on the wildlife management area. And with the federal grazing permittee, that's the base property for some allotments. Bringing those meadows back into production and working with that permittee to put some of that livestock use on our WMA has allowed pressures on some of the grazing allotments critical for elk herds, wintering elk use herds, and some of those conflict areas. It's relieved that pressure on those uplands by utilizing the meadows in a different fashion as well. Just another example. Obviously, it doesn't pertain to the entire unit group, but just another example of kind of how the departments work to adapt and minimize conflict.
Yeah, Commissioner Bourne.
I'll continue. Where do the geyser elk, I'm looking at the table here, and it shows a population estimate of 600, which is over objective. Current objective 350/900, which I don't know what that means. And where do the geyser elk fit into all of that?
Yeah, Commissioner Bourne, Cody McKee for the record. So I can clarify the slash. So the White Pine County subplan revision, or I guess that's the Lincoln County plan. It includes a short-term and a long-term objective. The short-term was 350 elk. A long-term objective was identified as 900, but the plan never identified what long-term was. And so it's created a little bit of a gray area. It's been nearly 20 years since that was revised. So we haven't quite gotten clarification or certainty on what we can be or what we could be targeting. Could we target 900 now? As far as the geyser elk goes, that is it's a little bit of a challenge in understanding exactly how those elk fit in with our population estimates. I would say when we're talking about how do numbers contribute to what we're assessing for objectives, we don't include those because they're within the incentive, their properties enrolled in the elk incentive program. However, when we're looking at population estimates themselves, we do try to incorporate those estimates. So for instance, here in 2025, I believe the geyser elk should be included.
But they're not included in this 600 right now.
I've got former Southern Region Supervisor Joe Bennett to answer that question.
Chairman Rogers, members of the commission, thank you for that question. Commissioner Bourne, Joe Bennett, Wildlife Staff Specialist for the record. So it's not included. The current Lincoln County plan states that when elk are truly unavailable due to agricultural lands or different things, that we don't have to include them in the population objective. So there's other instances within Lincoln County, such as some of the other private properties where we may encounter that as well. But in addition to that, we collared some animals that spent exclusively all their time on the Geyser Ranch during the hunt season in areas 22 and 23. So that's how we know those elk are not available during the hunting seasons.
Another question. I had a call last night from former Commissioner Bevan Lister. He had concerns over the 200 in Unit 241, 242, that current objective of 200 and that population objective of 110. He stated that the objective of 350 was the total number for 23 and 24 in the original plan. I'd like some clarification on that if I could.
Yeah, Commissioner Bourne, I can't answer that question for you right now. I can dive into the elk plan to see. My impression was that the 350 was specific for 231 and there was a separate objective for 241 and the remaining units.
Thank you.
All right, any other? Yes, Commissioner Munn?
Sorry to dive in with a thorny question, but how are you thinking about balancing these habitat objectives with some of these population objectives through this process?
So when you say habitat objectives, you mean assessing habitat conditions?
Sure. You know, on public lands, it would be land health standards, for example, being met. On private lands, it's going to be more complicated. But I'm just sort of thinking about how we both maintain our population objectives and our habitat objectives for these areas.
Yeah, I think that probably bears a little bit more discussion and thought on the department's end for sure. You know, one of the incorporations that were made within this process was an annual review or presentation from the land management agencies on range conditions to understand, you know, how do things look out there and whether or not the range could support more mouths to feed. You know, I think the beauty of, well, I wouldn't say the beauty, that's my interpretation, but I think this process does a really good job of balancing when we have good years, maybe an increase is warranted, but maybe in years of drought or other conflicts, maybe those are years where we keep things stable or maybe even a decrease is warranted.
I want to express a little bit of concern because we know our federal partners are struggling to keep their workloads at a manageable level. And I just I'm curious if there's been any thought on how the department might help achieve some of that required monitoring in order to have that information.
For the record, Caleb McAdoo. First, great questions. So the department has had numerous conversations with the land management agencies over the years, as you're aware, of, you know, utilizing some of our veg crews for monitoring, you know, in certain, I'll refer to them as, you know, areas of high consideration, you know, whether it be LCT type habitats or elk areas that are important. And I would say that those conversations are complicated, but obviously we have an interest in, you know, where we have the manpower to facilitate and offer a helping hand, we would certainly do that. I think key to this process from a habitat perspective is that from the department's view, what we're trying to do is to say, here's a baseline in 2025 of habitat and social perspectives. Where are we at that baseline? Do we have conflict? Have we triggered across an ecological threshold? You know, our annual variations, wildfire, precipitation, drought, et cetera, influencing land health standards. Are elk a contributing factor? Are they not a contributing factor? And trying to review all of that input on an annual basis. Working with key stakeholders in the development of this process early on, we had a really great suggestion to have the federal land management agencies present as part of that process in the January meeting, I believe, to kind of inform, hey, you know, here's some trajectories that we saw or trends from the last season on range conditions across the state to help inform those processes. I don't think the intent, frankly, was to get into the weeds of specific habitat monitoring, because we think, frankly, with the type conversion that's occurred across the state, primarily through wildfire, the forage availability for grazers primarily, whether they are cows or elk, has largely increased since these plans were reviewed back in the 90s and put in place. So it's probably more of a social consideration far more than it is a biological consideration as we are reviewing these things on an annual basis.
Moving in a little bit of a different direction and maybe not specific to this adaptive management plan, but as the department is thinking about its overall elk management plan, I'm curious if you have access to any data from tribal elders in what the sort of historic oral tradition tells us about what traditional elk herds were in northern Nevada. I know there's been research looking into newspaper clippings and whatnot that have told us information about where elk historically were. And I just think it would be really interesting, if possible, to dig into some of that oral history, if it's available, to help us guide how we're thinking about these populations going forward.
Good stuff. Very good question. Anything else from the commission at this time? Mr. Bourne, I see the wheels turning. Anything else at this time? I'll send it out for public comment if need be, and then we can come back, but yeah, Commissioner Bourne.
It's more of a statement. I guess I have concerns. Right now, we're just getting out of 40, 50-year low mule deer populations, and I have concerns over possibly, if we do allow the raising of elk numbers in certain units, the interaction with mule deer and elk and the possible negative impact on the mule deer in the future.
Commissioner Rogers,
Mr. McKee,
would you like me to address that?
Sure.
Yeah, so we have thought a lot about that, Commissioner Bourne. And unfortunately, the research into elk and mule deer competition is not very clear cut. And frankly, in Nevada, we have pretty low elk numbers to begin with. It's unlikely that we've reached densities anywhere, or we would reach densities where that would be very apparent and there would be population level impacts. And I do think if you kind of think about the status of mule deer across the state and where we have or haven't seen declines are ubiquitous across all counties, regardless of whether or not we have elk there. And with this proposed process, with these moderate increases that would be proposed, if an increase is permitted, we would be able to monitor rangeland conditions, mule deer populations, potential conflicts on landowners, and I think we would be able to see those issues as they are occurring and be able to be responsive and change the trajectory of our elk herds in response. One thing that we've proven to be very effective is our hunters are very willing to help us with elk management. And when elk numbers get a little bit too high, they have shown a very high propensity to get out in the field and do their best to lower numbers when needed.
All right, yes, Commissioner Gavilia.
Just one question, Cody, back on the question of habitat. I wonder if it's just on your bullet B there, we can just add also the range conditions when we do the annual summary. The range conditions could be part of that discussion. We don't have it like clearly defined, but we could add that just in that, population estimates, current population objectives, range conditions, just so that it's defined within the document.
Okay.
All right, good point. Thank you for that. Commissioner Messna, yeah?
Yes, thank you. I think everybody's going to be pretty sensitive moving forward in this process, and I only bring that up because when populations have gotten out of hand and we have been able to utilize the hunters to help us get these numbers back in check, one of the unintended consequences, in my own opinion, has been that increased hunter pressure has also increase the problem of pioneering herds. So I would be cautionary to get too big too fast and then try and pull back, even though our hunters can do it and they've proved it. I think that will greatly increase the pioneering herds, which will then just pose other problems in other areas. And so I truly believe that this process would move forward quite cautiously.
All right, thank you for that. Anything else at this time from the commission? Good questions, good stuff. All right, with that, if there's none at this time, this is a action item, so let's take it out, see if there's any public comment. So is there any public comment here in Las Vegas?
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark Cab, had a couple of thoughts on this. One is that because the agenda change came late in the cycle that I had to post, I was not able to have this on my agenda. So I'm going to be speaking on behalf of myself, listening to testimony today, so everybody knows that it was not a cab position. One is that pointed out that the unintended consequence of managing our elk herds here has been that we basically harvest cows. And the effectiveness of harvesting cows is probably, on a percentage basis, much higher than trying to harvest a spike or a raghorn or something sitting out there. I would say the hardest hunt I've ever been on was trying to do a spike elk hunt over in Paradise Valley. To be honest with you, it's very difficult. When you change that ratio, deer we manage about 30 bucks to 100 does. We're in the 70s in a lot of these herds of male to female ratio. And when we talk about pioneering herds, what drives pioneering herds is when you get too many males in an area, you're going to want to pioneer. I think we need to put a much more concerted effort into removing the percentage of males in these herds rather than the females and rejuvenate. But I mean, we're just not removing the number of males to females on a yearly basis, and we're only controlling growth by females, but we have really offset the herd numbers in a wild way. The other question I had is that when you look at total elk numbers in the state versus total feral horse numbers, I would think that feral horses have a much greater impact on mule deer and foraging and other things than elk. And so if we identify something with elk, it's only going to be magnified because of the horses in the area, in my viewpoint. So we have to take both those into consideration. I don't think the elk is the sole bad guy if there is a problem. I think horses are also causing an issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, for the record, Jim Cooney. I'm speaking on behalf of myself because as cab member Dixon mentioned, we ran into a conflict with the open meeting law with the addendum coming out at a time that we were not able as a cab to take any action on this particular item. With that being said, looking at the proposed addendum, I personally think it's a good proposal, looking at some of the areas on the chart where the numbers, the actual population is more than, it's higher than what the objective is. Talking with Mr. McKee, the thing that I see is starting at that particular point. An example would be in 07-6 through 08-1, it's up almost 1,000 head above what the objective is right now. To start at that point or somewhere close to that, and then looking at the first year, second year, and a 5-year, I think it's a good idea. It's a good process to follow, and I think we can get the management. Obviously, it helps. It solves the issue that Elko Cab had with looking at the sub-plans. So I personally think that's a good idea with this. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Any other public comment here in Las Vegas? All right, seeing no additional public comment in Vegas, how about public comment via Zoom?
Mr. Holman?
Yeah, hello?
Yes, go ahead.
So this is Haynes Holman with Nevada Cattlemen. You guys hear me all right?
Yes, go ahead.
So we are in support of this draft plan. We've looked at it. I feel like what NDOW is asking for here is flexible adaptive grazing, which is something our industry has asked for a lot. Ms. Munn, I hear your concerns and how do we look at this fast enough to be able to react? And kind of the answer is we do the best we can. And I think being in Nevada, what you're going to see here is probably a lot more reductions than you see increases because it's a drought year, 8 out of 10 years in Nevada. But we as an industry have tried, like say the adaptive management. We know rangeland management can't just fit in a box, and being able to look at these herds and go up a little bit when we have extra feed and go down a little bit. We appreciate being part of the process and having a seat at the table to put this together and feel that grazing should be reactive to resource values as opposed to just a box. So we hear the concerns there, and I think Mr. McAdoo knows this better than anybody. So we are in support of the draft as it's working and see what happens. Thank you.
Mr. Busselman, you're free to speak.
Thank you. For your record, I'm Doug Busselman, Executive Vice President of Nevada Farm Bureau. My comments today are based on our organization's policy for elk management plans. I want to express my appreciation for Caleb McAdoo's interaction, sharing the plans that are offered as proposals for consideration by the Commission on adaptive population objectives for established elk populations. Nevada Farm Bureau policy supports the premise of the proposal for having an annual process of a 6-member elk management committee consisting of 4 commission members as well as public of 2 representatives representing sportsmen in farming or ranching. Our policy position has identified our concerns over the present process for elk planning as mostly an internal process carried out in our review by there not being any public engagement processes. The change to an annual public process and the transparency of having 2 meetings as well as discussions that take place with local wildlife advisory committees, and finally interaction of reports with the State Wildlife Commission are positive. I want to make it clear that we are in agreement with this portion of the proposal. The area that we have disagreement with, using the current population estimates as a starting point, the Elk Management Committee, who would annually recommend an increase, decrease, or no change to population levels for each established elk population, quoting from the draft language, the maximum allowable change for each subsequent year would be capped at plus or minus 10% to prevent substantial population growth or declines from the previous years. Nevada Farm Bureau policy states that no increases in the existing elk populations can be tolerated until there is documentation increases in forage available, better overall range management, and all suspended livestock permits have been restored to their original capacity. We are troubled by the idea that there would be a possibility of increases in elk herd population increases when livestock producers have not been given back suspended AUMs that land management agencies have imposed. We would insist that the annual evaluation of the Elk Management Committee include language which would require, with requirements of federal land management agencies providing specific information of range health, as well as whether there are AUMs which livestock producers that agencies are not allowing the full grazing permit to be used. We look forward to working with the Commission and others to find a fair plan. We do not believe that it a fair plan being increasing elk herds while at the same time preventing the owners of livestock grazing permits from being returned to full allocation of AUMs because the land isn't available to have full capacity of established livestock grazing AUMs. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for your time today. My name is Joel McConnell, and I'm from the Elko Cab. Unfortunately, as previously mentioned, we did have some agenda issues and missing supporting material at our CAB meeting this week, and so no action was taken by the CAB at this recent meeting. However, our CAB has fully supported the Commission's adoption of Alternative 3 in response to our petition at previous CAB meetings. Personally, I'd like to support Addendum Number 2 and the adoption for the adaptive population objectives. I think this will be a huge improvement in how we as a state can manage our elk populations in the future. I'd also like to thank all the parties involved for all their hard work in reaching this solution in regards to Alternative 3 and the aforementioned here, the Addendum 2. You know, there's been a lot of hard work by the Commission, the Department, the CABs, the general public, and all the stakeholders involved. And I just want to acknowledge that, and we appreciate it. And I believe we've found a great solution to what has been a long-standing issue with our elk management plans. Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional public comment, I'll bring it back to the commission for any further discussion or comments, questions, motion. If there's a path forward, it's Commissioner Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Rogers. And maybe if the department can respond to Mr. Busselman's concerns about the AUMs, if they're being cut, like how procedurally would we work through those? I mean, I'm assuming that those discussions would come into January and March meetings that you talked about, Mr. McKee, but just to confirm that.
Yeah, that's correct. So, you know, one thing that I'm reflecting on now is we do have some work and some discussions that we need to have between now and November when we hopefully bring this forward for adoption, and how we might consider those comments. One thing I would, I guess, reflect on is, again, this is a very cautious approach, I think, to either increasing or decreasing elk herds, what we've proposed. And it has a series of checks and balances, whether that is the body that we're presenting to make the recommendations, the multiple public input processes that would be proposed. So you would have the CAB meetings where comments could be presented. We would have our subcommittee meeting and then the commission meeting. So that would happen twice a year through that process. And then just in general, you know, how do we consider those recommendations and how does that affect the elk on the landscape? Where might those AUMs occur? I mean, I think there's a lot of different elements to that comment that we need to think through.
No, appreciate that. Thank you.
Director Janay.
And if I just may restate that as at the end, the ultimate decision is this commission. You know, it would be the subcommittee reporting out to the commission, but also the action would be taken in, you know, this commission making that decision, but then also in any adjustments in quotas. So final vote would be amongst this commission.
Yes, Deputy Director McAdoo.
Yeah, for the record, Caleb McAdoo. I guess to further elaborate on your question, I sit here today and I think all the comments received are honestly a testament to how I view this process moving forward in these annual meetings, because they all have bearing on the process. And so as we start to drill down into a site-specific, unit-specific population change, be it up or down at some level, or to remain stable, those suspended AUMs, as was brought by Mr. Busselman, in my mind, would come to bear in that discussion in those periods, right? And so the specificity and cause, you know, I think would come into account. You know, what are the details of that? Where does that occur within the unit? But all those considerations would be brought forward, and I think would ultimately, again, as Director Janae said, the commission would have the ability to decipher. So I think I wanted to highlight a couple key points. Cody said it very well, of the checks and balances built into the process. We've tried to proceed cautiously here and intentionally built in a 1-year review to kind of say, all right, how did that first cut go? A 2-year review, and then a 5-year review. And then I wanted to point out on page 3 of the draft at the bottom, regarding, it says land management agencies will be requested to provide an update of rangeland conditions and forecasts at the Elk Management Committee meeting in January. So we're trying to get there to make that focus. We're not trying to move past concerns that stakeholders may have. We're trying to address them at each step in the process on an annual basis.
All right, perfect, thank you. Yes, Commissioner Keel?
Yeah, maybe to follow up, and I'm supportive of this process for sure. I think it's going to provide a much better outcome, more visibility, a lot more discussion, but also, like, can we address the heavy lift? Or maybe it's not a heavy lift for the department, but there's going to be a lot of research and work the staff is going to have to support. It's additional meetings. I mean, are we going to recoup that and greater efficiency at the May quota meetings? Are we going to, in your idea, what's the benefit? I mean, is it going to be selling more tags ideally, healthier herds, more efficiency downstream? Because it is going to come at a cost. It's clearly going to take a lot of effort to put all of this together.
Yeah, Cody McKee for the record. I mean, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think we should always be considering the resource investment that goes into decisions that were being made. And, you know, from my perspective, I see this, there is going to be, especially initially as we get this program off the ground, it will take a little bit more of a heavy lift, I think, than in future years. But for me, this is absolutely worth it, because we are having a discussion about maybe having some more elk. And that's been a discussion we haven't been able to have for almost 3 decades.
Yes, Deputy Director McAdoo.
For the record, Caleb McAdoo. Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think, you know, in an effort to increase transparency and stakeholder involvement, you're spot on. It's going to be increased staff time to make that a reality. We are committed to this process, identifying concerns or opportunities as we move forward to make it efficient as best we can. As Mr. Busselman spoke to, that stakeholder input is important to elk management in Nevada. And kind of speaking to Commissioner Bourne's comments about potential conflict with mule deer, the reality is in Nevada, we have had successional changes that favor species such as antelope and elk. And I think, you know, we're going to be in a position, whether it's in my lifetime or not, where those species that are early successional species that benefit, there's going to be habitat that can accommodate those species. And so I think the department is willing to make the investment on man time and stakeholder engagement to embrace our wildlife that can really benefit from the current environmental and ecological conditions as they change.
All right, thank you for that. Anything else from the commission at this time? And all good discussion. Any thoughts on where we go from here, moving forward? Yeah, Commissioner Keel?
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. I guess with that, if there's not going to be any other further discussion, I'd move to, not approve, but move to adopt this at the next meeting in November with some of the discussions that we've had regarding the rangeland and, other directives that we've seen, discussion points, expand on that as you guys work through that draft.
All right, we have a motion from Commissioner Keel. We have a second from Commissioner Caviglia. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you for that. Good discussion, appreciate it. All right, we are moving on to, again, agenda item number 10, which is we substituted for agenda item 21 that we had on the agenda for tomorrow. So this agenda item, again, is presentation on hunting, fishing, and trapping trespass regulation. Game Warden Captain Wes Coons, this is for possible action. The department will facilitate a discussion on issues related to trespassing for the purpose of hunting, fishing, and trapping, including possibly amending regulations to increase trespass violations to 12 demerits. Additional considerations include changing may to shall in NAC 504.671 for guides found guilty of trespass and providing a clear definition of trespass within regulatory language. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Commission. My name is Wes Coons. For the record, I'm a Game Warden Captain with the LA Division. So we were previously tasked with delving into the trespass issue regarding destruction of private property, increased demerit points, so on and so forth. So the way that we'll break this down today is going to be kind of a review of current law, our specific hunting law, and then we'll delve into 207.200, which is the general NRS for trespass. And we'll go over Mr. Morai's request as well. So our current law, NRS 503.240, is specific to hunting. It does grandfather in a lot of 207.200 regarding the signage, regarding the painted fence posts, and all the rest of that. The biggest portion here is this is the one that we go after when we talk hunter trespass. Again, it does delve straight into 207.200, which is any trespass that does not amount to a burglary. So this is going to be general trespass onto any private property. With this, they're all misdemeanor charges. Any trespass is a misdemeanor. In previous thing, and you can see on cops and stuff, when people are trespassed from places, they have to get that warning if it's not actually posted. That first initial warning is their warning. It lasts for 24 months. After that, it is an arrestable offense. But the first one is a warning for general 207.200 trespass. With that, we go into fencing. You will see here in section 207.200, 2B, we talk about fencing, as well as the intervals of which signs under C1, where signs need to be posted and or fences need to be marked. So we're talking, let's say, a general farmland that has barbed wire fence all the way around it, where signs need to be posted, what fences need to be marked, so people can see that it is exactly a private property. It goes over the signs in section 2A1, how big the signs can be that say no trespassing private property, as well as what they can be made of. Further on down, the big one here is 3. It is prima facie evidence that trespassing for any person to be found on private or public property which is posted or fenced as provided in subsection 2. So if there's proper signage, proper markings along the fence line, it's prima facie evidence that the person has already been warned by those signs. They don't have to get that warning like I talked about it before with, law enforcement giving the official warning for it. It's prima facie evidence that they have been warned. We go back into cultivated lands. Anything that is basically currently being farmed is prima facie to its private property. Another one here is 5B, which is fence. The one that I want to tag on here is the very last line. The term does not include a barrier made of barbed wire, but it is there to keep people out, right? Then it goes into guest. This is our demerits for 501.200. Hunting, fishing, trespassing, non-navigable waters on private property is a 9 demerit charge currently. Also have listed a person who is convicted of committing a wildlife violation within 60 months after conviction for the same violation will be assessed double the amount of demerit points listed in the schedule set forth in subsection 1. So we go into this. So currently it's sitting at a 9. With your 9 demerit points for a hunter trespass, the subject has once convicted, they have an opportunity to go back through hunter safety and reduce that 9 by 4 and be sitting with a 5. If we take this, and they can only do it once within 60 months, and they have to show that they've done it, and you can only do it one time, and it lasts for 5 years. So we have no regulation on trespass other than demerit points. Because of the warning aspect of people hunting or being on private property for trespass, it's not necessarily there. All we have is demerit points that we can assess upon the first one. Mr. Morai's request was to increase to 12 demerit points against the hunting license of those who commit trespass with the intent to damage private property. He had an alternate of a minimum 2-year waiting period to apply for game tags, as well as, it wasn't listed, but it was discussed, the addition of destruction of property, right, ripping down somebody's fence, and as well as hunting guides that commit trespass willfully or incidentally have their guiding license revoked. So going to 12 demerit points, we discussed this a lot and very in depth with our leadership, and we just don't see it. If you go to 12, person's automatically revoked. Regular Joe Schmo who did it by accident, didn't know it's his first time being out, whatever, he's revoked now for up to 3 years. Whereas if we leave it at 9, Joe Schmo who did it accidentally and we can show, can still take hunter safety, reduce that to 5. Right, so it gives him a second chance to kind of get out in the field and continue doing what he wants to try to do. So if he does that and he gets convicted of the same thing again, he's automatically revoked because his initial 9 went down to 5. Then he gets found for the 9, but it's doubled. So he's sitting at 18 on that one, plus his 5 is 23. So he's automatically revoked for a second offense anyways. While we do not get a lot of repeat offenders with this, it does happen. I think the 9 is a proven fact that actually does work. It gives the people that did it by accident a second shot, and it gives us the authority to charge double demerit points going forward for the people that reoffend in the same thing within the 5-year period. Because the language in trespass 207 as well as R503 is an NRS, we can't really change any regulations without somebody sponsoring that change. It's hard to delineate intentional versus unintentional with the current hunter trespass law. It refers to 207-200 only for warnings posted, right? That's the proper signage of the proper posting of the signage and or the painting of the fence posts. It is a misdemeanor crime. If we're not there to see it happen, the person that witnessed it has to sign the citation. Misdemeanor crimes in the state of Nevada, the officer has to be present and witness them, or it has to be proven and awarded by the courts. Revocation minimum for 2 years upon conviction. That's a big thing, right? Is the conviction portion. We can't just do it when the citation's issued. It has to be a conviction. If the commission chooses to increase to 12 demerit points for hunter trespass, the department can revoke for up to 3 years, which in turn has its own thing with the loss of bonus points. If the commission chooses not to increase the demerit points to 12, we have no mechanism that allows us to revoke anyone for 2 years. Guides already have a stipulation in the guide law for conviction of trespass that NDEL may revoke, and then we'll get into this. But in delving into the request was destruction of property, right? Proving that somebody intentionally ripped down the fence, the destruction of property, and what we can do on top of it. Currently, all we have is that person trespassed to hunt, and then we have a different charge of destruction of property. Destruction of property has no demerit points associated to it in our NAC. So we just kind of go over the basic NRS of 206. Injured to other property is the same thing. Any person who willfully, maliciously destroys, injures any real property or personal property of another. That's the big one because in here we get into real property and what constitutes real property per NRS 206. So fences, according to NRS, is property. So it does work, it does fit. We can charge that crime if we can prove that that person, that hunter, destroyed that fence. we've done it in the past, and we did get it to stick based off tire tracks that matched the side-by-side that was used in the commission of the crime, and we were able to basically get a conviction out of that, but there was no demerit points associated with the destruction. It was just a cost that the subject had to pay eventually. With the laws already in place, we have means to enforce while enforcing hunter trespass. We have to prove that trespasser destroyed that property. If we go off the word of somebody, it's basically hearsay. We have no power to kind of prove that they were. We have to have tire tracks, footprints, proof that the fence was intact before that day and that time. It kind of gets a little murky as to what we can prove, but it is possible, as we've done in the past. And again, it's not associated with any demerit points. Here's what we would like to change. Currently, as written, NAC 504.671 states the department may deny the application for or revoke or suspend a guide license for any of the following. Subsection 16 is providing guide service related to hunting or fishing on private land without permission, pretty much. What we're looking to change is from may to shall. Just that little term gives us a lot more power. It basically says that we are going to, and it reiterates the fact that this is coming. We think that will prove better with the guides. As we will discuss tomorrow, the guide laws are very outdated. It's been 20-something years since they've been touched. Captain Jake Kramer does have a big presentation tomorrow regarding that, and I think it'll show that we do need to kind of go through them again. In closing, we don't necessarily think that going to 12 is going to deter any of the repeat offenders in a great aspect. Of course, we're open to it if that's the way the commission wants to go. With 9, you get a repeat offender, they're still revoked. They're just get a chance to kind of hold their own and try again for the average Joe Schmo hunter. Demerit points are doubled. Like I said, that's how we get from the 9 to the 23 in that instance. We are open to the idea of adding demerit points in conjunction with hunter trespass. It would have to be an adjustment to other NACs because we can only charge basically the highest of any demerit points. If we charge a person with 5 different crimes, 1 carries 6 and the rest are 3, we go off of the 6. We can't add them cumulatively. We would have to get basically an adjustment to that to allow hunter trespass to include and or associate with the destruction of private property. Guide laws, like I said, they're over 20 years old. The regulations are over a decade old. We are willing to create and or work with to create a handout for people that own private property as to what they need to have, like some type of pamphlet that kind of regulates where signs need to be, what fence posts needs to be painted, so on and so forth. When I was in Elko, we met with a bunch of ranchers out there and kind of went over their property with them and where we would like to see signs, but we're open to that. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
All righty, thank you for that, appreciate it. How about any questions from the commission on that item? Comments, anything? A lot to chew on there. All right, well, if you guys want, we can chew on that a second, send it out for any public comment, and see what the public has to say at this time. How about any public comment here in Las Vegas? All right, seeing no public comment here in Las Vegas, how about any public comment via Zoom? All right.
Yeah, so this is Haynes Holman with Nevada Cattlemen's Association. I appreciate the presentation there. Understand where you're headed with the 12 points, that, yeah, maybe it doesn't do any good because they can just take hunter safety again and reset it. But it does cause an inconvenience if they have to go to 12 points. They do have to go spend the time to do hunter safety. So it is an inconvenience. It shows in our mind that the department and the commission are kind of serious about this. It shows that it's on the radar. Understand that not all trespass is intentional, and there's no way for the law to segregate intentional and unintentional trespass, right? It'll happen. You're out there, Nevada's big, it's not well posted. What the association and the cattlemen's concerns are the ground that's properly posted, everybody knows an intentional trespass. And are going to continue to lobby to kind of clean some of this stuff up in the NACs, and maybe we can get there, maybe we can't over time. But I would recommend 100% behind Pete's, Mr. Morais, what he brought to the commission. If it did go to 12 points, it just shows that we're more serious. It does have some consequences, which are small. Appreciate what you guys are doing on the guide stuff, because that's a big one too. And I think you're going to get there. It's just, as we look at the elk plans, as we look at engagement in hunting in private ground in the state of Nevada, we've lost the relationship. And I know you guys heard Pete's speech a month ago, but we've got to get back to a place where all the good hunters are getting a thumbs up from the private landowners to come hunt, and the relationship's there. And it's kind of lacking right now. And that's what we're trying to get to. And there's only 1 or 2% of hunters that are going to cross known private lands to do what they want to do. But we're kind of in the middle of a heated battle on this, and really appreciate the commission at least looking at this. Like I say, we do recommend you go to 12 points, but we appreciate you guys taking this seriously. Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional public comment, I'll bring it back to the commission for any additional discussion. Vice Chair Young.
Thank you, Chair Rogers. Captain, I've got a quick question. So when it comes to the hunter trespass with destruction of property, would that get them, if we were to look into amending that and adding demerit points to the 12 points? Because for me, with destruction of property is obviously a significant difference in a trespass, both being terrible. But with that being said, would that get them to 12 to get them to the suspension if something were to move forward on that?
Wes Coons for the record, it would take a lot more effort on our part and your part to kind of build that. We'd have to adjust the rest of the NACs to allow us to basically, in short, stack the demerit points on top of each other, right? You'd have one charge for hunter trespass of 9, one other charge for destruction of property for 3. You could eventually get there. I think that is a easy way to leave hunter trespass at 9, but associate demerit points for destruction of property, easily get there, right? If let's say, just for rough numbers, you set anything destruction of property up to $2,000 is 3 demerits, from 2 to 5 is 6, so on and so forth. You could easily get there with destruction offense. The one that we did that we got a conviction out of, he basically ripped down the corner of a fence with a side-by-side, and it was $2,800 to fix it, and it was maybe 40 foot of fence. So I mean, it's easy to get there, but it would take more work because we'd have to adjust the NAC that regulates basically which charge we go after as far as demerit points are concerned. But I do think it's worth looking into, honestly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Commissioner Gavilia.
I guess I have a more broad question. It's just my no knowledge on the issue. But so for any wildlife violations, when it comes to the demerits, we only go after, like, say, an individual, even if it was a poaching violation, if they violated 3 different sections of NAC, we only go after the highest demerits. We don't combine them.
Yes, sir. That is correct. Wes Coons for the record. Like I said, if we have 5 charges and one of the highest is 6, they get charged with 6.
Yeah, see, I didn't understand that either. This is kind of news to me. So that might be a discussion we want to have just in general, where if you violate 5 different items or 4, for me, if you violated 5 different laws, you're going to get, outside of demerits, you're going to get hammered for all 5 of them versus just getting demerits for 1. And that might be a more broader conversation to, like you said, it might take some work, but it might be, in my mind at least, that's a discussion I think we should have.
Jag Burgett, please correct me if I'm wrong, but that's the way that I've read it. That's the way we've operated since in my time here at Endo.
That's the first time I have heard of that. I've never dealt with that before. So to me, that should be an easy fix. If we're already in the NAC changing demerits, and I know you're going to hear about guides tomorrow, if you're already there, I don't know why you can't there should be easy language that you could create. That seems like an anachronism if that's the case, that we can only charge for the highest. And it may very well be true that that's the case, but you guys could take that on easily and change that if that's the case.
Yes, Commissioner Messna.
Thank you. For clarification, if somebody is issued 12 demerit points, they cannot decrease those points by taking a hunter safety course, correct?
That is correct. Yes, sir. Wes Coons for the record. That's from 9 to 12. Anything 12 and above is they have to basically come and present their case in front of the commission.
So that would mean if you're slapped with 12 demerit points, that's automatically losing your hunting privileges for 1 year, correct?
Yep. Yeah, they would have to come to you and basically request that it be heard in order to lower those 12.
So when we were talking earlier, sorry not to carry this on, but when we're talking about almost nobody gets convicted of the same crime twice, that means that in essence, the person that does get convicted of trespass is never going to lose their hunting privileges if you never catch them twice as it's written right now.
Wes Coons for the record, that is correct. But it does give them 9 if they choose not to take hunter safety and lower it. The second they get fishing no license charge, that carries 3, they're at 12. So it's any wildlife crime.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else from the commission or questions or ideas on the path forward on this?
I mean, myself, I'm open to the broader discussion on being able to, or just to review that the demerits for the multiple violations can be stacked. I think that's a big one. I also don't have, I don't have a problem addressing an NAC regarding destruction of property and adding demerits to that also. I think that's important. That's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Cavilla. And I do. I agree with you on both of those items. Vice Chair Young, I'm sorry, did you have?
I didn't, but I'll make a comment anyways. Thanks, Chair Rogers. No, I would support Chair Rogers and Commissioner Cavilla. I think opening it up and looking at multiple different points as well as looking at potential distinguishability between trespass and trespass with destruction of property. And I believe the guides was addressed as well in this presentation. However, it seems like to me, we'll wait for tomorrow to look more into that. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right. Anybody else? With that, I apologize. We've been going on here. Did we send this out to public comment? We did. Okay, we're back. All right. So, only 1 cup of coffee this morning. Anyway, so yeah, with that, is it just a directive to the department based on what we've talked about, or just we need a motion for that? And if so, if somebody wants to tackle that.
I can make a motion, just for the record. So I would ask for the department for future review to look at, I don't know if that's an NAC, but the requirements for being able to combine demerits, if we could do a little further review on that, and then also look at the NAC specific to adding demerits associated with destruction of private property for future review at the commission.
All right, good. All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Cavilla. We have a second from Commissioner Messna. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, we are now moving on to agenda item number 11. And this is State Wildlife Action Plan online demonstration. This is informational. GIS analyst Riley Donovant, I hope I said that right, Riley. An overview and live demonstration of the Nevada State Wildlife Action Plan will be provided exploring the new online public-facing Viewer and its powerful tools for searching, mapping, and downloading information on Nevada's species of greatest conservation need and key habitat statewide. So, good morning.
Morning. My name is Riley Donovan. I'm a GIS analyst with Data and Technology Services. And I will be presenting the State of Nevada Wildlife Action Plan website. So to start with, a little bit of an overview about state wildlife action plans. The goal of state wildlife action plans is to conserve species by identifying the species that are in the greatest need of conservation, by identifying looking at their key habitats, the threats to those species and those habitats, conservation actions that benefit those species and habitats, and research and monitoring needs for those species. State wildlife action plans are a nationwide effort with action plans across the United States and territories. These plans are also a requirement for state and tribal wildlife grant funding. And with that requirement is a requirement for revisions every 10 years. Nevada's first State Wildlife Action Plan, or SWAP, was produced in 2005, with plans in 2012 and the most recent plan in 2022. A bit of an overview of Nevada's State Wildlife Action Plan. Nevada's State Wildlife Action Plan has 367 species of greatest conservation need. There are aquatic and amphibious species. Of those species, a handful of them are found only in Nevada. There are, within those aquatic and amphibious species, there are aquatic invertebrates, including bivalves, mussels, and gastropods. We've got reptiles, birds, mammals, and terrestrial invertebrates are in addition in the 2022 State Wildlife Action Plan. Those are our important pollinators, such as bees and butterflies. In addition to our species of greatest conservation need, 19 habitats were identified. Those include terrestrial habitats such as desert grasslands or sagebrush-dominated shrublands, as well as aquatic habitats such as springs, rivers, and lakes and reservoirs. Currently, the State Wildlife Action Plan, or previously rather, the State Wildlife Action Plan existed in documents. So our current 2022 State Wildlife Action Plan is over 300 pages long, and previous State Wildlife Action Plans existed as PDFs and binders of documents. So the decision was made to take the plan and make it more interactive, to put it online, to make it easier for users to search, click, zoom, and then use the data and layers in their own customizable ways. So with that, we produced our online website. The goal is to provide an interface that would be interactive and engaging, increase applications for data, and improve access to the data. So here I'll skip through a couple slides and then we'll click through a demonstration. So here is the site. This image shows the site scrolled down just a little bit. Above this section is a section that provides an overview of state wildlife action plans. In the state wildlife action, and then in addition to that summary, we've got a section that describes two of the tools that are in the State Wildlife Action Plan site, a habitats web tool and a species web tool. So I will show you the species web tool first. To enter the species web tool site, you have to agree to a disclaimer before accessing the site. And then you see the web tool. On the left are several category selectors for major species types, aquatic, bird, mammal, and reptile. Then further down the screen is an option to search by species. You can enter in a term such as pika, or you can click and select. So here, we'll select the category of reptile, and then listed below are all the reptile species that you can select. For this example, we'll select the common chuckwalla. As we move to the right of the screen, we've got the common chuckwalla, the scientific name for this species, as well as an image of the species. Then as we move further right, we've got a map that includes what type of occupancy this species is using this habitat for. And in this map, you can zoom in to get a closer look of the habitat distribution. Then moving to the right, we've got the habitat types that the species depends on. Those habitats include Mojave Warm Desert and 2 others, as well as species threats that the species is facing, and then the conservation actions that benefit this species. If you want to learn more about the common chuckwalla, you can click the species account, which will jump you to a section that includes all of the information in the State Wildlife Action Plan species account about the chuckwalla. You can scroll further down the page and get to the distribution section. There is a link that you can click that brings you to a search result with the common chuckwalla. If you click on that search result, it will take you to a map. Here you can zoom into the map just like we could before. You can also select download if you want to use this layer in your own application. And there are several different types of ways, or download types that you can do for the data. So jumping back to the home page here, the other tool I would like to highlight is our habitat data viewer. Again, like we did for the species web tool, you have to agree to a disclaimer before entering the site. And like in the species web tool, there is a list on the left you can use to select different habitat types. So for this example, we'll select Mojave Warm Desert. That shows the habitat and only this habitat on the map. You can zoom in and look at the habitat in greater detail. And below that, in small text, is the habitat area, so the number of acres that this habitat takes up across the state. As we move further right, we've got a bar graph that includes the number of species within this habitat type, broken apart by major species type, including aquatic and amphibious species, birds, terrestrial invertebrates, mammals, and reptiles. And below is a species list. You can filter that species list by clicking on one of the bars in the bar graph. Here, reptiles has been selected, and our list below only includes reptiles. As we move further to the right, we've got threats. These are the threats that this habitat is facing, and conservation actions. These are the conservation actions that would be most beneficial to this habitat type. If you would like to learn more about the Mojave Warm Desert, if you move all the way back to that left-hand side of the screen, you can click on that View Habitat Information. And it will take you to a section all about Mojave Warm Desert. And this information is very similar to what is found in the State Wildlife Action Plan habitat sections. And from here, you're also able to explore different species. So if you want to learn more about species, you can move to the species list and click on one of the species. Here, the Morrison's bumblebee was selected. And this is one of the terrestrial invertebrates that's new to the State Wildlife Action Plan. All terrestrial invertebrates are new to the State Wildlife Action in 2022. And information about habitat and occurrence, as well as other details about these species, are present in the plan. And here you can learn more about the Morrison's bumblebee. If you want to look up and try and find layers that you are most interested in, we also have a data library. That is what this screen is showing here. And that gives you the ability to search for layers that you are interested in. So here, habitat, we have searched for habitat, and it brings up the layer that most closely matches that term. Nevada's Wildlife Action Plan, key habitats. You can select that. And like before, it'll bring you to a screen. If you do want to use this layer, it gives you options on how you can use the layer. If, for example, you were someone who had a project and wanted to look at different habitat types in relationship to other layers, you could stack or use the data in that manner. In addition to a data library, we also have citations. Those are the citations from the State Wildlife Action Plan. So between the homepage, the Habitat and Species Explorer, the key habitat sections, species accounts, data library, and citations. That includes the major sections of the online website. And with that, this site is currently available. If you did want to access this site, you could. The URL to get to the site is included at the first bullet point here. You're also able to get to this site from the Department of Wildlife website. If you click into the Learn and Discover Conservation and NDOW Data Hub, like is shown on the left, then you'll end up at a website that the picture on the right that has a link near the very top for the State Wildlife Action Plan. You would click Learn More to get to the site. Some of the next steps, we are hoping to add some additional photographs to our online site. There are some species and subspecies, around 15 or so, that we just didn't, at the time we put this together, didn't have pictures available. Some of those species include, for example, the fish spring pocket gopher, so we're hoping to include some of those photos. We're also hoping to continue to develop resources for a variety of audiences. We have currently public-facing the NDOW Data Hub. We've got our Wildlife Connectivity Plan, which we also have an online public-facing resource. Currently in development, we've got a sagebrush conservation plan, as well as a project siting tool. Our project siting tool is intended for helping those who are planning projects find the least impactful location to put that project when it comes to impacts to wildlife. So this site would not have been possible without the hard work from a lot of different people. Those people include Justice, Lilia, Emma, Danny, Marley, Kalea, Chelsea, and Morgan. So a big thank you to all the people who've put in many hours to make this possible. And with that, I'll take any questions.
All righty, thank you for that, Riley. I appreciate it, and I appreciate that last slide on there, recognizing all those that are involved, because as you were going through your presentation, my mind was spinning on the amount of man-hour, labor, everything else, and intellectual capital that went into putting all of that together. So anyway, that was great. Questions from the commission at all? Comments? Yes, Ms. Commissioner Martin.
Well, I'm going to echo the chairman here in just complimenting you and your team and the department on a yeoman's effort to put this together, to bring this kind of information to people's fingertips. I think really increases the opportunity for partners to help the department in conservation and helps make that data available and user-friendly. And it is a huge lift, and I think it will really benefit the state. So thank you for your persistence and for making it happen.
Deputy Director McAdoo.
For the record, Caleb McAdoo, I wanted to, I guess, dogpile on here, and thanks to Riley and her team. Riley, I got a preview of the presentation today, and the site with Riley, and I was astonished at the data that they have put in there and the user friendliness of it. Huge effort, as you indicate, and appreciate Jasmine. I mean, the swap alone, the hard copy, is impressive, and taking it to the next level and making this data really in a usable, digestible format is very impressive. So thank you to everybody involved.
Sorry, Commissioner Bourne. All right. I did have one question. I was just curious. I mean, all this information is great, and excuse me, and to have the accessibility to it on the website or what have you. Just curious if there's any plan or anything that has been discussed with conservation education to get the word out to the public and other user group that that this is available, that it's there. So just curious what, if anything, is being done from that regard.
Yeah, definitely. Riley Donovan for the record. For coordination with conservation education, we just made the site public this week, so we're hoping to, as things move forward, work more closely with conservation education. I was talking with Jasmine Kleiber about making and coordinating efforts and really just trying to get the word out so people know where to look for the site, know to find it, know that it exists. So we're hoping to do that to further promote the site.
All right, great. Thank you again very much. Anything else? Yes, Commissioner Messna.
Real quick comment, I can't help but say that this whole time I was watching this, I just kept thinking, you know how much time this would have saved doing book reports and, in those early years? I'm not sure if that's even a thing anymore, but that's what kept popping in my head, going, wow, this is like an encyclopedia on steroids. So thank you, that was impressive.
If you think that's cool, Commissioner Messna, we'll do a demonstration on ChatGPT sometime, and it'll really blow your mind. Yes, Commissioner Munn.
I actually do have one question that I was thinking about as this came forward. This is an incredible resource that's sort of species by species and habitat by habitat. Once upon a time, you guys also had a sort of synthesis, the CHAT, the critical habitat assessment tool. I'm curious if you guys have thought about how that relates to this data and whether or not those kind of synthetic prioritization of habitats is something that you're going to revisit or, make available. I mean, I think it's still available online, but I'm just kind of curious if you could riff on that.
Ms. Kleiber is on the run.
Much more informed individual coming forward.
Thank you for that question, Jasmine Kleiber, for the record. That's a great question, and it's actually something that Riley has been working on recently, and that's partly what we're intending to do with that industrial siting tool. The CHAT, yes, a crucial habitat assessment tool, is no longer maintained. And so you can access the data, but it's not currently being updated. And that tool was really intended for those kind of large landscape scale planning efforts. But we have found in working with different developers and industry and partners that we still have a need for something like that. And so that's going to be part 2. And when we are finished with that, I'm sure that Riley will be able to give another presentation to update the commission.
Thanks for that.
All right, good, great. Anything else from the commission? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. Appreciate that. All right, moving on to agenda item number 12. This is public comment period. Informational public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. No action can be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. Persons making comments are asked to begin by stating their name for the record. So with that, any public comment here in Las Vegas? All right, seeing none, how about any public comment via Zoom? All right, seeing none, I believe that is our final agenda item for the day, so I appreciate everybody's engagement. We will stand adjourned until tomorrow morning at 8:30. Thank you. Yeah.